Chapter 614. Li Salong met up with the Poison Emperor. In exchange for releasing the Poison Emperor, Li Salong forced him to swear a heavenly oath. Then, he took out a wooden box that contained 12 green needles. He then pierced the green needles into the Poison Emperor's body. In an instant, a terrifying surge of spiritual power was released from the Poison Emperor's body. A green needle that was as thick as a thumb was slowly forced out from the back of his neck, before it was ejected and turned into smoke. Once the wooden dragon needle was out, the Poison Emperor's aura skyrocketed again. The entire mountain range trembled. The 6 chains rumbled and the runic lights on them flickered, but they still could not restrain the Poison Emperor. After a loud explosion, the chains were broken, and the Poison Emperor was freed. "Kid, tell me who you want to kill." "Chu Kuangren." Li Salong gritted his teeth and spat out a name. Then he threw out a colorful jade token. "This is the heavenly pardon order that I obtained from the barren forbidden area. Refine it before killing this person." The Poison Emperor's eyes lit up with joy when he received the heavenly pardon order. Then he was surprised. "The person you want to kill is a Sky Pride." "That's right," Li Salong said solemnly. "He's the most terrifying chosen of the present age. No, perhaps the most terrifying one in all of history. No matter how much he hated Chu Kuangren, he had to admit it." Interesting. Divine Radiant Church. Ever since Chu Kuangren caused trouble, the Radiant Ancestors' ground was now an empty shell. The power of light had completely disappeared. In the Ancestors' ground, a golden-haired old man sat cross-legged. It was the Radiant Pope who was recuperating. In the outside world, the Radiant Church was being maintained by a group of elders, so it would not fall apart anytime soon. After all, the faith was still there. As long as the faith did not collapse, the Radiant Church would not be destroyed. But suddenly, a slight fluctuation appeared in the void of the Ancestors' ground. The Radiant Pope opened his eyes and looked at the void. "This aura, it's you. I can't believe you've also refined the heavenly pardon order." Then a person slowly walked out from the void. The person was dressed in a gray robe with an ancient longsword hanging on his waist. His cold aura made the void around him feel like it was being cut apart. "Long time no see, Radiant Pope." The person was the Wind Cloud Sword Emperor of the Swordsmen. The two of them were not from the same generation, but they had met face to face. Although they were not friends, they did not have any enmity. "Why are you looking for me?" "Ask someone." "Oh, Chu Kuangren." Hearing this name, the great Pope of the Light Church could not contain his murderous aura. Divine flames of light roared out from his body. After asking a few elders, he found out that the heretic who wreaked havoc in the Radiant Ancestors' land was called Chu Kuangren. Every time he thought of this person, he found it hard to restrain his anger. "Why ask him? My sword clan has enmity with this person. He killed the taboo of my clan. I heard that the Radiant's ancestral land fought with him before, so I came to ask about it." The Sword of Wind and Cloud said indifferently. Knowing that the swordsmen were also Chu Kuangren's enemies, the Holy Light Pope's gaze towards the Wind Cloud Sword Emperor had softened a little. He was no longer so guarded against him. "This person's strength is indeed very strong." "How strong?" "In a one-on-one fight, I might not be a match for this person." The Holy Father of Light pondered for a moment before speaking. His words shocked the Sword of Wind and Cloud Sword Emperor. After all, Chu Kuangren was also a taboo Sky Pride in the past. His current strength was not much different from the Sword of Wind and Cloud Sword Emperor, but now he had to admit that he might not be able to defeat a young Sky Pride of this generation. Is he really that strong? This person is an anomaly that cannot be measured by common sense. The Holy Father of Light recalled the scene when Chu Kuangren destroyed the Divine Light Shadow. That kind of power indeed made his heart palpitate. Since he is an anomaly, he should not exist in this world. The Sword of Wind and Cloud Sword Emperor said. "What do you want to do?" "Join forces to destroy this person. With him around, the others will not have a chance to become emperors. I think the emperors will not be willing to let him continue to exist." A murderous intent flashed across the Sword of Wind and Cloud Sword Emperor's eyes. "Join forces? Other than you and me, who else?" The taboo of the demonic tribe and the Dark God Order were both killed by this person. "I will talk to the emperors." "What? You want me to cooperate with the Dark God Order?" Are you kidding me? The Holy Father of Light was furious. Chu Kuangren had just come to the ancestors' land with Chu Kuangren not long ago, and now he wanted to cooperate with them? Was there something wrong with him? Could he be any more magical? The most important thing now is to get rid of Chu Kuangren. You should be able to sense that the energy waves coming from Mount Emperor are getting stronger and stronger. An emperor's ascension is imminent, and once Chu Kuangren becomes an emperor, it'll be difficult for him to take revenge. So what? It's not like we don't have any emperors in the Dark God Order. The Holy Father of Light snorted. The emperors are all in the 9 heavens, so they can't intervene here. Besides, if we can't take revenge now, it will be even more difficult when he becomes an emperor. The Holy Father of Light took a deep breath and pondered. In the end, he gritted his teeth and said, "All right, we will prioritize killing Chu Kuangren. As for the Dark God Order, we will settle the score later." Compared to the Dark God Pope, he hated Chu Kuangren more. Very well. The Sword of Wind and Cloud Sword Emperor nodded. After a brief discussion, the Sword of Wind and Cloud Sword Emperor left. An operation against Chu Kuangren was in progress. In a certain city. At this moment, Chu Kuangren was recovering his spiritual power in a cultivation pagoda that was specially provided for cultivators. Not only that, but he also took out the Ancestor Land's foundation stones that he obtained from the Radiant Ancestors' Land. There were a few crystals that were filled with the power of light. The power of light contained within them was incomparably majestic and terrifying. This level of light energy is extremely useful for light Dao cultivators. I can give it to Lan Yu. However, one crystal was enough for Lan Yu to refine for a long time, and he had 4 of them in his hands. He pondered for a while, and decided to refine the remaining 3 crystals. After the barren forbidden area ends, I guess many orthodoxies will have received the Heavenly Pardon Order. Those emperors should be showing up soon. Now that I'm standing in the eye of the storm, those people won't let me go so easily. I have no background in this emperor's path, so if I want to fight against them, I must quickly become stronger. I can't let go of any opportunity to improve myself. Chu Kuangren murmured and refined the remaining 3 light crystals. The combined energy of these 3 crystals was not any weaker than the primordial Taoist origin, so he had 2 more Emperor's essences in his body. At this moment, he had 9 Emperor's essences in his hands. 9 Emperor's essences was the highest cultivation level a cultivator could achieve below the Emperor realm. Due to the restrictions of the laws of heaven and earth, it was difficult to improve further. The next step was to become an emperor. With the 9 Emperor's essences formed, Chu Kuangren's strength had improved again. In a good mood, he opened the fantasy roulette and drew a prize. Congratulations, host! You have obtained the legendary rune, Heavenly 9 Dragons Transformation. Rune? Heavenly 9 Dragons Transformation? Chu Kuangren opened the rune and retrieved it. His eyes lit up when he saw that it was a rune that could forcibly increase one's strength. It absorbed the natural energy of heaven and earth and transformed it into dragon chi. Once the dragon chi entered one's body, one's strength would skyrocket without any side effects. This was much more awesome than the 9 Deaths Blazing Blood art. Chapter 6:15. After the barren forbidden area's opportunity of fortune appeared, the Emperor's path fell into a brief period of peace. There were no other opportunities of fortune that appeared. Chu Kuangren took advantage of this period of time to find a place to temporarily settle down and organize his gains during this period of time. It was worth mentioning that Chu Kuangren was most interested in the Supreme Deity Tier Physique Tome. It was also the one he had been studying, and his research subject was Lan Yu. Lan Yu possessed the Holy Radiant Physique, which was a supreme Taoist physique. As Chu Kuangren interacted with her, he had also deduced her Taoist physique through the Book of Physiques and gradually made it his own. Master, are you done? Lan Yu blinked as she looked at Chu Kuangren, who was holding her hand. These days, Chu Kuangren had been doing intimate things with her, such as holding her hand or patting her head. He said he wanted to study her Holy Radiant Physique. Although she did not resist, she was still a little curious. Holding her hand and patting her head was enough to study a supreme Taoist physique? Yes, I'm done. Chu Kuangren retracted the spiritual power that he had injected into Lan Yu's body. He raised his hand and a white light appeared in his palm. That was the power of light. Lan Yu's eyes widened. Did it really work? She was in disbelief. He could study a supreme Taoist physique just by touching her head and holding her hand? Wasn't this too magical? She had heard that the heavenly golden palace had spent tens of thousands of years researching and developing the heavenly golden imperial physique. Moreover, it was not the complete version of the heavenly golden imperial physique. Chu Kuangren had only spent a few days to do so. Master, you're just too amazing. Lan Yu looked at Chu Kuangren with sincere admiration. The longer she stayed by Chu Kuangren's side, the more she realized how amazing Chu Kuangren was. Her admiration for him grew day by day. Of course. Chu Kuangren touched his nose, enjoying her admiration. In fact, he was a little surprised himself. This physique tome was too amazing. It was no wonder it was a supreme deity tier reward. It had only been a few days, and he had already studied the holy radiant physique. Moreover, the process was not difficult. As long as Lan Yu stood in front of him, he could understand the mysteries of her Taoist physique. If they were intimate, it would speed up the process. Now he had the power of a supreme Taoist physique. I'm still far from being able to fully comprehend the Book of Constitution. Chu Kuangren did not become complacent. On the contrary, he set a goal for himself. One day, he would capture all the physiques in this vast universe and fuse them into his body, creating a brand new physique that belonged solely to him. The strongest and most terrifying physique. Another 2 days passed. On this day, a terrifying aura suddenly erupted from the cultivation tower in the city, and a huge Dharma idol suddenly appeared out of thin air. This Dharma idol overflowed with colorful lights, and its aura was peerlessly tyrannical. It was mixed with many different types of power, yet it was perfectly fused. The Dharma idol hovered in the sky and its face could not be seen clearly. However, the aura it emitted caused all the cultivators in the city to tremble. Fortunately, this Dharma idol only appeared for a moment before disappearing. Although it was only for a moment, the impact it caused was huge. All the cultivators in the city were discussing it. The top of the cultivation tower. Chu Kuangren put away the Dharma idol and smiled with satisfaction. The power of the Dharma idol is indeed extraordinary. Although this Dharma idol is based on the divine ferocious avatar and fused with the other Taoist physique powers, strictly speaking, it is no longer the divine ferocious avatar. From now on, it will be called the 10,000 Taoist avatar. The 10,000 Taoist avatar wanted to fuse the power of all the Taoist physiques in the world into one Dharma idol. It was obvious how ambitious Chu Kuangren was. He walked out of the cultivation tower and found that many cultivators had gathered outside. Tower Master, please tell us who the owner of the Dharma idol is. Let us go and pay him a visit. Yes, Tower Master, such a strong cultivator has come to our riverside city. We can't neglect him. Please tell us. The cultivators were asking the cultivation Tower Master. However, the Tower Master had his own difficulties. Everyone, you know the rules of the cultivation tower. We will never reveal the information of cultivators. Please leave. The Tower Master said. The cultivation tower was similar to an inn. It was specially prepared for cultivators who needed to go into closed-door cultivation. In other words, it was a place to do business. Business must be honest, and the Tower Master would not easily reveal the information of his customers. Chu Kuangren smiled in satisfaction when he heard the Tower Master's words. However, at that moment, a cultivator took out his communication compass. As if he had received a message, his expression changed drastically. What? The swordsman, demonic tribe, divine radiant cult, and other sage orthodoxies have all come to the Seven Emotions sect to force them to hand over Chu Kuangren. *CKME, what's going on? Is this a war between orthodoxies? One by one, the cultivators' communication compass vibrated. Obviously, they had all received the news. Not far away, Chu Kuangren's expression turned grim. Force the Seven Emotions sect to hand over Chu Kuangren? What a joke. He's here. Why would he go to the Seven Emotions sect? Soon, he had a rough idea of what was going on. Chu Kuangren was alone in the sea of people, so it was hard to find him. However, the Seven Emotions sect was different. With such a huge orthodoxy there, he could not leave even if he wanted to. The swordsman and other forces were trying to force him to show himself through the Seven Emotions sect. This news must have been released by the swordsman and other forces as well. As for why they would go to the Seven Emotions sect, that was even simpler. Chu Kuangren had been in the Emperor's path for a long time, and had made enemies with many forces. Only the Seven Emotions sect was on good terms with him. During his trip to the barren forbidden area, Lung Ningyu and Red Moon were also very close to him. Who else could he go to if not the Seven Emotions sect? Hey, you're finally here. Chu Kuangren laughed instead of getting angry. However, the chill that emanated from his body made the surrounding cultivators shiver. Lan Yu was not afraid of the chill as she walked up from behind. Master, do you want to go? She had also heard the discussions of the people around her. Of course I want to go. Chu Kuangren let out a cold smile. He and Lan Yu packed their things and left the cultivation tower. Meanwhile, the news of the emperors from various forces going to the Seven Emotions sect had spread throughout the emperor's path in a short time. All of a sudden, every cultivator was shocked. Everyone's attention was focused on the Seven Emotions sect. This is going to be interesting. The Seven Emotions sect is an ancient orthodoxy after all, but now they're being threatened by so many ancient orthodoxies because of Chu Kuangren. TSK, this is just too tragic. The swordsmen, the demonic tribe, the Bai clan, the Wang clan, the Yinyang sect, and even the Qing clan. My goodness, just how many forces are there? There's indeed an emperor in the Seven Emotions sect, but they can't withstand so many emperors from so many ancient orthodoxies. This Chu Kuangren's influence is just too great. He alone has attracted so many ancient orthodoxies. This should be enough to leave his name in the history books. Do you guys think Chu Kuangren will go to the Seven Emotions sect? It's hard to say, but if he doesn't go, the Seven Emotions sect will definitely not end well. Who asked them to be related to Chu Kuangren? Chapter 6:16. The Seven Emotions sect. As one of the ancient orthodoxies in the Emperor's path, the Seven Emotions sect was not considered weak. In fact, it was one of the top orthodoxies in the Emperor's path. However, the Seven Emotions sect was now facing an unprecedented crisis. In the Seven Emotions sect's Grand Hall, Cold Moon Fairy was pacing back and forth with an ugly expression on her face. At that moment, Lung Ningyu and Red Moon walked in. Honorable teacher, another emperor has arrived. Red Moon said with a gloomy expression. In the void outside the Seven Emotions sect, many figures were floating in the air, each of them emitting an extremely domineering emperor's aura. These emperors were the strongest cultivators in their respective ancient orthodoxies. Just one of them was enough to intimidate everyone. But now such a group of people were all gathered together. Such a scene was extremely rare. Another one. Who is it? Cold Moon Fairy asked. There were already enough emperors, so why was there another one after another? Was there an end to this? It's the Emperor of the Runic Lands, Xiaofu Huang. That old man is here too. Cold Moon Fairy's expression changed slightly. She had read about Xiaofu Huang in the ancient records before. He was an old immortal who had lived for at least 100,000 years in the Emperor's path. His lifespan was definitely considered long among the emperors. Honorable teacher, is there a need for so many emperors just to deal with Brother Chu? Red Moon asked in confusion. The emperors outside were all recorded in the historical records. They were all legendary figures in the emperor's path. If it were not for the lack of great Daros in the past, many of these emperors would have become emperors by now. Yet now, all of them were gathered together to deal with Chu Kuangren. That was too much. No matter how powerful Chu Kuangren was, he was still a young sky pride. Of course. Cold Moon nodded solemnly. If Brother Chu doesn't die, their sky prides won't be able to become emperors. They will always be suppressed by him and live in his shadow. They have to pave the way for their juniors. You make it sound nice. In the end, it's just the juniors who can't defeat Brother Chu, so the seniors came out to cause trouble. Red Moon snorted and snorted. Hearing this, the Cold Moon Fairy could not refute it. In fact, that was the case. Senior sister, do you think Brother Chu will come? I don't know. Lung Ningyu shook her head. Do you want him to come? Chiyu asked again. This question stunned Lung Ningyu for a moment. Then, she went silent for a moment and shook her head. I don't know. She wanted to see Chu Kuangren again. However, he didn't want the other party to come here and take the risk. However, if the other party didn't come, his sect would have to bear a huge risk. Right now, she was very conflicted. This was a complicated emotion that she had never experienced before. Ever since she met Chu Kuangren, she realized that the changes in her emotions were much more intense than before. Qiyu and the Cold Moon Fairy exchanged glances. It looked like Lung Ningyu was really tempted. And it was quite deep. Sigh, let's think of a way to get through this tribulation first. Outside the Seven Emotions Gate. In the sky, a dozen figures stood in the air, including the Sword Emperor of Wind and Cloud, the Great Pontiff of Light, and the Great Pontiff of Darkness. The Wind Cloud Sword Emperor looked at a lady who was standing at the entrance of the Seven Emotions Sect's Grand Hall and said, Misty Queen, you guys have 2 days left. If Chu Kuangren still doesn't show up after 2 days, we'll make our move. Upon hearing that lady, who was also Misty Queen, turned grim. She was an emperor of the Seven Emotions sect who had just finished refining the Heavenly Pardon Order and walked out of the ancestral land. She did not expect to be in such a desperate situation the moment she stepped out. However, as an emperor of the Seven Emotions sect, she had no choice but to face it. People like you, trying to force him out when you can't catch him. You've wasted your years. Whatever you say. You only have 2 days anyway. The Sword Emperor of Wind and Cloud Sword Emperor said calmly. After living for so many years, he had heard all sorts of things. Just a few words from Misty Queen could not change his mind at all. Humph. Misty Queen snorted coldly. She looked calm, but deep down, she was extremely anxious. If this went on, the Seven Emotions sect would really be in danger. She turned around and walked into the Grand Hall. Have you found Chu Kuangren yet? Misty Queen asked Lung Yu. No, Lung Yu said helplessly. She had already used all the information channels that the Seven Emotions sect could use. However, she still could not find any traces of Chu Kuangren. It made sense when she thought about it. If Chu Kuangren wanted to hide, who would be able to find him? If it was that easy, the swordsman and demonic swordsman would not have come to the Seven Emotions sect to force Chu Kuangren out. Even if we find Brother Chu, Misty Queen, do we really have to hand him over? Red Moon frowned and said, what else? Are we really going to sacrifice the entire Seven Emotions sect because of him? Misty Queen said indifferently. She had never met Chu Kuangren before, so she had no feelings for him. Between a stranger and the Seven Emotions sect, she would naturally choose the Seven Emotions sect. Red Moon, the Cold Moon deity, and the others knew this too. After hearing what Misty Queen said, they felt a little uncomfortable, but they did not refute. The Seven Emotions sect was indeed facing a life and death crisis, and Chu Kuangren was obviously the only key to breaking out of this predicament. Besides, the Seven Emotions sect's true leader was Misty Queen, so there was nothing Cold Moon deity could do. Someone's here. At that moment, Misty Queen suddenly looked outside the Seven Emotions sect's mountain entrance in surprise. Red Moon, Lung Yu, and the others were delighted too. Is Chu Kuangren here? However, when they looked at the mountain entrance and saw who it was, their faces immediately fell. Red Moon even revealed a look of disgust. Why is this guy here? Outside the Seven Emotions sect's mountain entrance, 2 figures walked in. One was an old man while the other was a young man. The old man walked in front while the young man followed behind. The 2 figures leaped into the air, and soon arrived at the Seven Emotions sect's Grand Hall to meet the group of emperors. Everyone instantly shifted their gaze to the old man, and their eyes gradually revealed a hint of seriousness. The old man's eyes were deeply sunken, his face was haggard, and there was a strange gray chi constantly circulating around his body. The gray chi made the martial emperors present shudder in fear, as if it was some kind of terrifying creature. It's him, the Poison Sovereign. Some of the knowledgeable emperors recognized who it was. 10,000 years ago, the Poison Sovereign was already a famous emperor, and many emperors had heard of him. Ehe, I heard that you guys are also looking for Chu Kuangren. I hope you don't mind if I join in. The Poison Sovereign chuckled. Are you here to help him? or to kill him? The Wind Cloud Sword Sovereign said. I'm here to kill him. In that case, we welcome you with open arms, the Wind Cloud Sword Sovereign said. Meanwhile, Misty Queen's eyelids twitched as she said, how many people has this Chu Kuangren offended? It's understandable that the emperors from other orthodoxies are here to kill him. After all, they're here to help their descendants become emperors. But what about this poison sovereign? He's always been a loner, and he had disappeared for a long time since 10,000 years ago. Why is he here now? And he's here to kill Chu Kuangren too. Cold Moon Deity felt helpless at her words. Brother Chu, your ability to offend people is a little too great. Chapter 6:17. The arrival of the poisoned sovereign increased the strength of the group of emperors. At this point, the number of emperors who wanted to go against Chu Kuangren had reached 15, and each of them was a top-tier emperor. Each of them had cultivated the emperor's essence. This power was enough to sweep through the emperor's road, and no one would be able to match it. F***ck, this must be Li Salong's doing. Red Moon glared at Li Salong and gritted her teeth. Since he came with the poison sovereign, it was obvious that they were in cahoots. Li Salong seemed to have noticed her gaze, and looked over with a cold smile on his face. What do you guys think? Will Chu Kuangren come, or will he choose to live? It's none of your business whether he comes or not. Red Moon was a hot-tempered person, so she cursed. If he doesn't come, the 7 Emotions sect will be finished today. Poor you and your senior sister. You've already given your bodies to him, but now you're being abandoned. I feel bad for you guys. Upon hearing Li Salong's words, everyone turned to look at the two ladies. Even the Cold Moon Fairy was a little shocked. Red Moon, I made your senior sister fall in love with Brother Chu, so that she could cultivate the path of oblivion. I didn't make you do it too. Even Chi Yu couldn't help feeling ashamed and indignant at this moment, loudly shouting. Nonsense, you're slandering me, Li Salong said. No one can cure the Crimson Ruler Serpent's poison. Whether it's slandering or not, you know best. Just because you can't cure it doesn't mean Brother Chu can't. Red Moon snorted. Enough. It's best if you two are related to Chu Kuangren. As for the rest, I don't have the time to listen to your arguments. The Sword Sovereign of Wind Cloud snorted. It was best if the two ladies were related to Chu Kuangren. That way, it would be more likely for him to come to the 7 Emotions sect. Spread the word that if Chu Kuangren doesn't show up tomorrow afternoon, we'll kill the 7 Emotions sect's maiden Lung Ningyu first. The Sword Sovereign of Wind Cloud took out a jade scroll and sent a message to the swordsman. Soon, the news spread throughout the Emperor's path. The 7 Emotions sect's maiden Lung Ningyu and Chu Kuangren had always been a rumor. Especially now, when the Sword Sovereign of Wind Cloud wanted to kill Lung Ningyu to force Chu Kuangren out. It seemed to confirm the rumor. TSK, poor Saintess. She's going to die just like that. Why hasn't that D***Ned Chu Kuangren appeared yet? My poor maiden sage, I don't want her to die. This Chu Kuangren can't be a scumbag, can he? Even heroes have a weakness for the charms of a beautiful woman. The 7 Emotions maiden sage is as pure as ice and as pure as jade. I can't believe she's been taken by Chu Kuangren. How many male cultivators have their hearts broken by this? The 7 Emotions sect is very lively right now. It would be a waste not to see such a scene. Why don't we go and take a look? The 7 Emotions sect was the well-deserved focus of the Emperor Road. He didn't know how many forces were eyeing him. There was even a large group of rogue cultivators heading towards the 7 Emotions sect. Time flew by. Soon the second day arrived. In front of the 7 Emotions clan's main hall, Lung Ningyu's cultivation was sealed. There was an invisible force field around her that trapped her like a cage. He was like a prisoner awaiting his execution. However, Lung Ningyu's expression was extremely calm. It was as if the person who was about to step on the road to hell wasn't her. On the other hand, Red Moon and the others who were not far away from her were extremely anxious. The Sword Emperor of Wind Cloud glanced at Lung Ningyu and said, "The Supreme Wang Qingdao is indeed extraordinary. Even at this point, you can still remain so calm. Are you really not afraid of death? What's the point of being afraid? If it's useless, why should I be afraid?" Lung Ningyu said. Well said. I'm starting to admire you now. The Sword Emperor of Windcloud's eyes were filled with admiration. At that moment, Li Salong walked up to her. Ningyu, as long as you say that you're not related to Chu Kuangren, I'll ask the Poison Emperor to save you. What do you say? Lung Ningyu looked at him and said coldly, Aren't you the one who said that I'm related to Brother Chu? Now you want me to admit that I'm not related to Brother Chu? Don't you think that's ridiculous? Ningyu, are you really willing to die for Chu Kuangren? Li Salong clenched his fists and said with bloodshot eyes. Lung Ningyu ignored him and did not even bother to look at him. She stood on the spot and stared at the Seven Emotions Sect's mountain gate. Lung Ningyu, I've liked you for so many years. I can't believe that you won't even look at me when you're at death's door. Fine, fine. Li Salong had completely given up. He gritted his teeth and turned around. He looked at the people from the Seven Emotions sect and said coldly, After you die, I'll do everything I can to take revenge on the Seven Emotions sect. I'll wreak havoc on the sect that you care about the most. The Poison Emperor looked at him and chuckled. You're a healer, but you're so cruel. Kid, I'm starting to like you a little. Li Salong did not say anything. Being liked by the Poison Emperor was not a good thing. Who knew how he would torture him? If it were not for the heavenly oath, he would have been killed by the Poison Emperor in the cruelest way possible. It was almost noon. The Sword Emperor of Windcloud gathered sword chi on his fingertip and said to Lung Ningyu, What are your last words? Lung Ningyu looked at the mountain gate, and Chu Kuangren's face appeared in her mind. For some reason, she suddenly wanted to see him. But she would never see him again. There's no need to say anything else. Let's do it. Lung Ningyu said. Lady Ying Huang, please save senior sister. Yes, Lady Ying Huang, please save the maiden sage. Not far away, Red Moon and the others were anxious. Ying Huang stood still with her fists clenched, and her face extremely gloomy. She wanted to save her as well. That was the Seven Emotions sect's taboo. However, the emperors around her were all staring at her. Once she made a move, she would be attacked by the emperors. She would not be able to do anything against such a force. If you're not going to save her, I'll do it. Red Moon gritted her teeth and dashed towards Lung Ningyu. She used all her strength to crash into the invisible force field. Save the maiden sage. We can't just watch as the saintess dies. Under Red Moon's lead, some of the Seven Emotions sect's disciples stepped forward. However, Ying Huang and the Cold Moon deity's expressions changed. A bunch of ants. The Poison Emperor snorted coldly and flicked his sleeves, sending out a gray mist that swept away Qiyu and the others one by one. Not only that, but the mist also contained a deadly poison that continuously invaded the disciples' bodies and corroded them. Soon, Red Moon and the others' faces turned black and blood flowed out of their orifices. I don't think Chu Kuangren will show up anymore. Why don't we just destroy the Seven Emotions sect? The Poison Emperor chuckled and activated his toxic plague evil physique. Poisonous mist continuously gushed out from his body. And wherever it went, countless disciples were poisoned and fell to the ground. Their faces turned black, and they were on the verge of death. Seven Emotions Maiden Sage, it's time to die. The Windcloud Sword Emperor condensed his sword chi at the tip of his finger, and slashed at Lung Ningyu. The sword chi then formed into a giant sword shadow. Under the sword pressure, Lung Ningyu had nowhere to run. The sword shadow descended upon her, but she did not look at it. Instead, she looked outside the Seven Emotions sect's mountain gate. Perhaps her heart was also anticipating something. No. The Cold Moon deity and the others watched this scene with bloodshot eyes. Suddenly, the Windcloud Sword Emperor let out a soft gasp as a look of shock appeared on his face. His sword shadow was caught by a hand. Chapter 6:18. The sword shadow slashed down from the sky, carrying with it a bone-chilling sword pressure. No one below the Emperor realm could withstand that sword attack. Not to mention that Lung Ningyu's cultivation level was sealed, and sovereigns from the Seven Emotions sect like Ying Huang were being targeted by the other sovereigns. Lung Ningyu's death was almost certain. However, just as the sword shadow was about to slash down, a fair and slender palm with 10 fingers suddenly appeared out of thin air. Under everyone's watchful eyes, the palm easily caught the sword shadow in midair. If you want to kill her, have you asked for my permission? A cold voice rang out from the void. Then two figures walked out from the void. One of them was dressed in white, with waist-length black hair, and a gorgeous longsword hanging from his waist. He grabbed the Wind Cloud Sword Sovereign's sword shadow with one hand calmly. Chu Kuangren. It's him. He's finally here. Everyone's expression changed. Red Moon, Cold Moon Deity, and the others were overjoyed. On the other hand, Li Salong was the complete opposite of them. He glared at Chu Kuangren, and the hatred in his eyes was so intense that it almost materialized. As for the sovereigns, most of them were curious as they sized up the person they wanted to kill despite meeting for the first time in their lives. The Grand Pope of Light and the Grand Pope of Darkness were aware of Chu Kuangren's strength, but their expressions were extremely solemn. He's really here. Lung Ningyu stared at Chu Kuangren's back in a daze. She thought she was going to die, but she did not expect Chu Kuangren to save her once again like a deity descending from the heavens. This was the third time. This was the third time Chu Kuangren had saved her life. She would never be able to repay him in this lifetime. Crack! A cracking sound echoed in the air. Chu Kuangren clenched his fist, and the sword shadow that the Wind Cloud Sword Sovereign unleashed was forcefully crushed, turning into smoke and dissipating. TSK, so you're Chu Kuangren? From the looks of it, it is indeed extraordinary. The Poison King said in amazement. Chu Kuangren glanced at him, and then at the poisoned Red Moon, and the others. He said, Plague Evil Physique interesting. He looked at the Poison Emperor as if he was looking at his prey. He was currently in need of research materials for the Book of Physiques. Wasn't this Supreme Taoist Poison Evil body just right? Being stared at by Chu Kuangren, the Poison Sovereign could not help but feel a chill run down his spine for some unknown reason. He muttered, This kid is strange. As Chu Kuangren lifted his arm, a large amount of water vapor gathered and gradually enveloped Red Moon and the others. As the water vapor entered their bodies, the complexions of Chiyu and the others gradually improved as the poison in their bodies was expelled from their bodies. To be able to expel my poisonous qi, what a brilliant medical skill. It is not inferior to Mu Longzi from back then. No, it is even more brilliant. The Poison Emperor said in shock. After curing everyone of the poison, Chu Kuangren pointed his finger at Lung Ningyu and broke the seal within her body. Then, with a wave of his hand, he tore apart the invisible force field around him. Lan Yu, take her away first. Yes. Lan Yu grabbed Lung Ningyu and retreated to the front of Ing Huang and the others. The sovereigns around him did not stop Chu Kuangren either. Instead, they watched as he completed his task. After all, Chu Kuangren's appearance was their goal. As for the Seven Emotions sect and Lung Ningyu, they were just bait. We finally meet again, the Wind Cloud Sword Emperor said as he looked at Chu Kuangren. His eyes were filled with a boiling killing intent. This is not a good thing for all of you. What do you mean? Now that you see me, there will inevitably be a fight, and the only ones who will die will be you. So this is not a good thing for all of you. You're so arrogant. This is the truth. The sovereigns' expressions turned grim. They were a group of sovereigns who could easily intimidate an entire region. Yet Chu Kuangren treated them like they were nothing. This person was far more arrogant than what they had heard. Chu Kuangren, you really don't know what's good for you. Why don't you take a look at your current situation? The swordsmen, demonic, Bai, and Qing clan sovereigns are all here. Even if you have 3 heads and 6 arms, you won't be able to escape death today, Li Salong said coldly to Chu Kuangren. So it's an ant like you. Chu Kuangren glanced at him and chuckled. He then casually unleashed a sword chi that tore through the void and headed towards his opponent. The Poison Emperor immediately dashed in front of his opponent and unleashed a palm attack. Activating his toxic plague evil physique, the horrifying palm chi collided with the sword chi. However, the sword chi slashed across the center of the Poison Emperor's palm, leaving a bloody wound on it. The Poison Emperor was forced to retreat. The remaining sword chi landed on Li Salong's body, severely injuring him on the spot. He spat out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground like a rag doll. Chu Kuangren. Li Salong lay on the ground, his body riddled with holes from the sword chi. He was like a pile of mud, unable to get up. All he could do was stare at Chu Kuangren with hatred. However, Chu Kuangren did not care at all. He was not in a hurry to kill Li Salong either. Instead he said, "Just lie there and watch how I kill all of you." He stood with his hands behind his back and glanced at the sovereigns. The sovereigns were also looking at him. From the various techniques that he had displayed since he appeared, especially when he forced the Poison Emperor to retreat with a single sword attack, it was obvious that his strength was no ordinary sovereign's. However, none of the sovereigns present here were easy to deal with. "He's here. Which one of you wants to attack?" His strength does seem to be very strong. Even I can't accurately sense his cultivation. However, we have already damaged the reputation of the orthodoxy by threatening the Seven Emotions sect. If we join forces to besiege a young junior, won't we become the laughingstock of the world? In my opinion, we should just pick 2 of us and kill him. The rest of us just have to make sure he doesn't escape. That makes sense. These sovereigns were all top-notch sky prides of their respective eras. Some were even forbidden sky prides, and they were all prideful figures back in the day. It was already very shameless of them to attack a young junior, but for the sake of their own sky prides, they had no choice but to do it. However, they could not bring themselves to gang up on Chu Kuangren now. Don't underestimate this person. Let's attack him together. The Grand Pope of Holy Light tried to persuade them. He knew how terrifying the person in front of him was. That's right. Let's gang up on him. The Dark Pontiff also said. The Dark Pope and the Light Pope were 2 incompatible factions that had a deep grudge against each other. Yet they had the same opinion at that moment. This caused the emperors to be extremely shocked. Was Chu Kuangren really that terrifying? Listen to them. It's best if all of you attack together. Chu Kuangren glanced at the crowd and said, I don't believe that a junior sky pride can be that strong. Back when I was dominating the world, I didn't even know where your ancestors were." And sovereign in a black and white Taoist robe snorted. He was the sovereign of the Yin Yang sect. He took a step forward and attacked Chu Kuangren first. Between his palms, the power of Yin and Yang circulated. It was as if a majestic Taoist rhyme had fused with the emperor's qi that this sovereign had cultivated. Upon seeing that, Chu Kuangren raised his hand and punched. Boom. In an instant, an explosion was heard in the void, and a terrifying Taoist rhyme erupted. It almost condensed into mysterious Taoist patterns. And it was even accompanied by a horrifying phenomenon of the sun and the moon flipping and the stars falling. It landed directly on the sovereign's palm. Amidst the explosion, the sovereign let out a scream. The power of Yin and Yang was instantly broken, and his entire arm exploded into a mist of blood. His entire body was sent flying like a kite with a broken string. Chapter 619. With a single move, a martial emperor's arm exploded and he was sent flying. With a single move, an emperor was heavily injured. A single move had awed all the monarchs present. I told all of you to come at me together, but none of you believed me. Chu Kuangren retracted his arm and said indifferently. The Great Pontiff of the Light and Great Pontiff of the Dark Pontiff exchanged a glance, and could not help but reveal a trace of horror in their eyes. Judging from Chu Kuangren's punch just now, they could sense that his strength had grown even more terrifying. It's only been a few days, how did his strength increase again? Damn it, isn't this guy a little too abnormal? The 2 popes gulped. One had to know that the other emperors might not even see any improvement even after thousands or tens of thousands of years, but Chu Kuangren could improve once every 2 to 3 days. Who the F***ck could stand this? It was too terrifying. Meanwhile, outside the Seven Emotions sect, the cultivators who were watching the battle were all dumbfounded. They were shocked by Chu Kuangren's punch. Especially the group of young sky prides, their faces were filled with confusion. Severely injuring a top emperor with one punch. You're telling them that he's a genius just like them. Stop joking. Which clan's prodigy was this terrifying? Why is this guy so terrifying? This is a sky pride? Both this guy and I are geniuses? Are you kidding me? I feel like he can crush me with his toes. Monster. After a brief moment of silence, all the cultivators burst into an uproar. The sounds of discussion rose and fell. Some of the forbidden sky prides looked at Chu Kuangren in despair. How were they supposed to compete for the throne against someone like him? He must die here today. Otherwise, we won't stand a chance at all. One of the forbidden sky prides murmured as he stared at Chu Kuangren. The other taboos had similar thoughts. As long as Chu Kuangren did not die, they would not be able to compete with him for the throne. So powerful. The Sword of Wind and Cloud Emperor was the first to recover from the shock. His opponent's punch actually gave him a palpitating feeling, so he didn't dare to be careless and instantly unsheathed the ancient sword at his waist. The long sword was unsheathed, and a piercingly cold sword ray rushed towards Chu Kuangren. In terms of swordsmanship, can you beat me? Chu Kuangren chuckled. The descendant self was unsheathed, and the purple sword light streaked across the sky. In the blink of an eye, two beams of sword light with terrifying sword-based Taoist rhymes erupted, causing the surrounding void to buzz and tremble. However, the Sword of Wind and Cloud Sword Monarch's expression changed drastically. He felt that his sword Taoist rhyme was being suppressed. Exquisite 9 Orifices Sword Heart. His Tao is already very close to the ultimate level, and with the exquisite 9 Orifices Sword Heart, he can actually suppress my ultimate Tao. The expression of the Sword of Wind and Cloud Sword Emperor was extremely unsightly. Two beams of sword light clashed continuously in the void. The two swords kept colliding in the void, and sword chi swept out, causing the ground around them to explode. Sword Winds and Clouds. The Sword Monarch of Wind and Cloud let out a deep roar, and activated the quasi-monarch art that he had invented. With a boom, the wind and clouds gathered as the sword ray slashed towards Chu Kuangren. Heaven-rending drawing technique. Chu Kuangren let out a soft roar and slashed with his sword chi. The surging sword light poured down like a flood, and a terrifying aura that seemed to be able to destroy everything exploded. It directly tore apart Sword Emperor of Wind and Cloud Sword Chi, and pushed him back nearly 100 meters, smashing into the wall of the palace. Divine radiance illuminates the world. Dark tide engulf. At that moment, the Great Dark Pope and the Great Light Pope behind Chu Kuangren attacked at the same time, unleashing their most powerful techniques. One white and one black, one light and one dark, two completely different energies erupted, turning into two terrifying torrents of energy that swept towards Chu Kuangren. The other emperors also attacked one after another. After witnessing Chu Kuangren's strength that heavily injured a top-notch emperor with a single punch, they no longer had the intention to fight him alone. They only had one thought in mind now. Let's go together and completely destroy this anomaly. That's more like it. Chu Kuangren laughed. Come, let me see how far the highest combat strength in the Emperor's path can push me. Accompanied by an extremely terrifying burst of Taoist rhyme. The four supreme Taoist physique strengths and Emperor's chi within Chu Kuangren's body surged out. 10,000 Taoist avatars were formed out of thin air. The 1,000-meter-tall avatar was overflowing with colorful lights, and surges of Taoist rhymes circulated within it. When it unleashed a punch, the 10,000 transcendental force, ferocious chi, battle intent, piercingly cold sword chi, and the supreme light force all converged at one point. The void suddenly exploded because of this surge of energy, and the entire space was instantly filled with cracks that quickly spread like a spider web. The light force and darkness force were the first to collide with this fist strength, but they instantly disintegrated and collapsed. The other emperor's techniques were also shattered one after another. The terrifying impact sent more than a dozen emperors flying. What kind of power is this? It's too terrifying. Oh my god, what kind of avatar is this? Why does it have so many Taoist physique energies, and all of them are supreme Taoist physiques? How can such a terrifying demonic existence exist in this era? The Emperor's expressions changed drastically as they were all shocked by the 10,000 transcendental avatars' power. It was not that they had never seen a supreme Taoist physique before, but it was definitely their first time seeing so many supreme Taoist physiques fused into one person's body. They had never even heard of such a thing before. If we don't kill this person today, we will never have a day of peace in the future, the Dark Pope said coldly. He took a step forward, and the surrounding spiritual power in the sky above Chu Kuangren converged towards him. With a pious look on his face he chanted loudly, O dark god above, let the dark tide devour the world. An even more terrifying dark tide formed, causing the sky to turn pitch black. It was as if everything within a 10,000-mile radius was plunged into darkness. The light pope did not back down either. He leaped into the air and chanted devoutly, O God of light above, let the divine light shine upon the world. In the darkness, a dazzling white light suddenly bloomed. The white light continued to spread and gradually fought against the darkness. It was the same technique, but it was even more powerful. Two torrents of black and white rushed towards Chu Kuangren once again. Chu Kuangren no longer held back the Emperor's essence within his body. The power of the 9 surges of Emperor's essence erupted, causing a terrifying Emperor's aura to emanate from his body. The 10,000 transcendental avatar behind him also became more solid. With a punch, it forcefully shattered the 2 torrents of Emperor's aura. The 2 great popes immediately spat out blood, and were sent flying. They looked at Chu Kuangren in horror. 9 surges of Emperor's essence. He has cultivated 9 surges of Emperor's essence. How is this possible? 9 surges of Emperor's essence was the limit that a cultivator below the Emperor realm could achieve. Even an Emperor would need to spend countless years, or even hundreds of thousands of years to achieve this level of cultivation. However, Chu Kuangren, a junior Sky Pride, had reached this level. Although the other emperors were shocked by Chu Kuangren's cultivation level, they did not stand still. They quickly followed the 2 great popes and attacked one after another. Great Luo Frost Palm. The Qin Emperor let out a low roar and unleashed a palm attack that contained the Emperor's essence, causing a monstrous chill to erupt. Chu Kuangren raised his hand and gathered the 4 divine primordial swords to shatter the Frost Palm attack. The 4 divine sword chi instantly blasted the Qin Emperor away with blood spewing out of his mouth. In the void, one rune after another suddenly appeared. They were formed by Xiao Fu Huang from the runic domain. Each rune contained an extremely powerful energy fluctuation. However, Chu Kuangren activated his mind power, and destruction runes appeared out of thin air. The mysterious power of the runes instantly shattered the runes one by one. The demonic emperor mobilized his surging demonic qi, and turned it into thousands of evil spirits. Chu Kuangren activated the Tathagata rebirth mantra, and the Buddhist light shone in all directions. Wherever it went, thousands of evil spirits would vanish into thin air. Apart from the 10,000 transcendental avatar, Chu Kuangren's various cultivation techniques dazzled the crowd. Chapter 620. Inside the 7 Emotions sect, a rare battle was taking place. As for the 2 sides of the battle, one side was the most powerful emperors in the Emperor's Road, while the other side was just a genius of the younger generation. Anyone who heard of such a disparity would scoff at it. What is this? A dozen emperors teaming up to fight a junior Sky Pride? How is this even possible? In fact, this ridiculous scene was playing out in front of all the cultivators of the 7 Emotions sect. Not only that, but the situation was developing in an unimaginable direction. Originally, the cultivators thought that with more than a dozen peerless emperors attacking at the same time, who in this world could not take them down? Such power was almost unparalleled in the emperor's path. However, the truth was, a dozen emperors could not take down a junior Sky Pride. How do you guys know this guy? Inside the 7 Emotions sect's Grand Hall, Flush Queen gulped in disbelief as she watched Chu Kuangren fight from the ground to the sky. Chu Kuangren was fighting a dozen sovereigns from the ground to the sky. Not only her, but the cold moon deity and the others were also in shock. It was just too terrifying. Not long ago, when Chu Kuangren went to the barren forbidden area, he was far from this level. How did he change so much after a trip to the barren forbidden area? It was as if he was a completely different person. High up in the sky, various types of energy exploded and Taoist rhymes appeared one after another. The entire sky was colorful and eye-catching. Everyone was trembling in fear. This was because they could feel the horrifying murderous intent hidden beneath that beautiful scene. It was an unstoppable force in the Emperor's path. Bone-rotting poison palm. Boom. The Poison Emperor and Chu Kuangren's palms collided. The bones in the Poison Emperor's arm exploded on the spot, but he was overjoyed. Kid, I've finally caught you. In an instant, a horrifying poison qi gushed out from the poison emperor's body, and instantly entered Chu Kuangren's body. Even an emperor would have a hard time surviving this poison qi. No matter how strong your cultivation base is, you won't be able to resist it. Is that so? Chu Kuangren smirked, and held onto the poison emperor's arm tightly. Then he raised his hand and unleashed 2 more punches on his opponent's chest. The other party's body almost exploded under this force. However, Chu Kuangren had a firm grip on his arm, making it hard for him to break free. Seeing that his opponent was about to land another punch on him, the poison sovereign decisively let out a roar, and channeled his spiritual power to break his arm before retreating. At the same time, the arm that Chu Kuangren was holding exploded on the spot, and a large amount of poisonous blood enveloped him. Quick, he's poisoned. The poison emperor endured the pain of losing his arm and roared, Chu Kuangren, die. One of the sovereigns took a step forward and unleashed a punch. A terrifying surge of lightning energy that seemed like it could destroy the world enveloped Chu Kuangren. Heaven and earth reversal. Similarly, Chu Kuangren threw out a punch. With a loud bang, the lightning on the monarch's fist shattered. His entire body exploded into a cloud of blood mist. The terrifying fist force didn't diminish in the slightest as it flew towards the other sovereign realm cultivator, forcing him back several hundred meters. The group of emperors glared at the poison monarch. With such terrifying power, you're telling me he's poisoned? What a joke! The poison monarch himself was a little confused. That's impossible. He's been poisoned by my poisonous qi, and coupled with the effects of the poisonous blood, there's no way he can recover so quickly no matter how skilled he is. That's impossible. The poison monarch was in disbelief. His toxic plague evil physique had always been successful, and it had never disappointed him. How could it be defeated by Chu Kuangren? What can the toxic plague evil physique do to me? Chu Kuangren chuckled. The immortal body was already highly resistant to poison. On top of that, Chu Kuangren's physical body had undergone a series of good encounters, making it extremely tough. Even the toxic plague evil physique's poison could not do much to him. Not to mention that he was a top-notch healer. The toxic plague evil physique might be successful against others, but it was useless against him. Alright, now show me your trump cards. Chu Kuangren lifted his arm. An array of lightning flew out and transformed into a guqin. He plucked the strings and played the 8 celestial demonic chords. It's musical Tao. How many other cultivation techniques does he know? D*eminent. And that's an emperor weapon. Does he think he's the only one with an emperor weapon? The emperors looked at each other, and took out their respective emperor weapons. Chu Kuangren, no matter what price we have to pay, we will kill you today. The great dark pontiff said coldly as he held a pitch-black longsword in his hand. That's right. I will avenge the emperors of the radiant ancestral lands, even if I have to join the Darkness Alliance. The great holy light pontiff held a white scepter in his hand, and his eyes were filled with hatred. A surge of cold sword Tao aura erupted. The ancient long sword in the hands of the sword emperor of wind and cloud had streams of brilliance flowing around it. It actually shed its ancient appearance and turned into a colorful, crystal-like longsword. This was the true form of the ancient longsword. Chu Kuangren, I must avenge the swordsman's taboo. The Wind Cloud Sword Emperor said coldly. The Wang family will not sit idly by and watch you grow stronger. Rays of 5-colored light flowed around the emperor of the Wang family as the 5 elemental energies erupted. He waved a large flag in his hand. That was another monarch weapon of the Wang clan. Although Xiao Jingchen is the Bai family's son-in-law, he's a heavenly lord with a mysterious yellow body. He obtained the inheritance of a great emperor in the barren Forbidden Land, and had a great chance of ascending to the throne. However, because of you, all his hopes have been destroyed. The Bai family sovereign's eyes were also filled with hatred. He took out a long spear, which emanated a terrifying emperor's aura. My demon race's taboo cannot die in vain. The demon emperor snorted coldly and took out a large seal. The word demon was engraved on the seal, and it was surging with a terrifying demon qi and emperor's might. Imperial weapons appeared in the void one after another. An incomparably surging emperor aura filled the space between heaven and earth. Chu Kuangren chuckled. He then pushed the Taoist rhyme on his body to its limit, and channeled his emperor's qi into the spring thunder guqin. Very good. Emperors, use all your strength and let me enjoy myself to the fullest. Clang! Chu Kuangren plucked the guqin strings with his fingers, and the sound of the guqin reverberated throughout the realm. The first movement of the 8 demonic chords, boundless heaven and earth. The sound of the zither was the sound of war, pushing the battle to its climax. The emperors then activated the emperor's weapons in their hands. In an instant, the longswords unleashed sword qi. The longswords emitted a terrifying dark aura. The scepter glowed with a white light, the spear pierced through the air, the spear danced like a dragon, and demonic qi surged out of the large seal. The power of the various emperors' weapons collided with the Taoist rhyme of the zither. Everything within a radius of 10,000 kilometers shook violently. The void exploded, and the ground shattered. The terrifying impact caused everything in the surroundings to be destroyed, as if it was the end of the world. The 7 emotions sect sovereign's expression changed drastically. Activate the mountain barrier formation. A giant light barrier enveloped the 7 emotions sect, resisting the terrifying power that erupted from the collision of the emperor's weapons. In the distance, the cultivators were terrified. They either fled in panic or channeled their spiritual power to defend themselves. In an instant, it was as if doomsday had arrived. Chapter 6:21. In the void, the powers of the various emperor weapons collided in a frenzy. The heavens and earth exploded as energy surged in all directions. Chu Kuangren plucked the strings of the spring thunder guqin and played the 8 celestial demonic chords. Terrifying guqin music Taoist rhymes spread out. Boom, boom. When the emperor's qi entered the emperor weapons, the power of the emperor weapons was unleashed to its fullest. Mysterious Taoist patterns even began to form in the void. Chu Kuangren fought against more than 10 emperor weapons with his guqin. His strength was indeed terrifying, but he was not completely unaffected under such circumstances. Under the impact of the emperor weapons, his physical body was under unimaginable pressure. If it were not for his incredibly strong physical body, he would have been crushed into a pile of minced meat. However, under such circumstances, his guqin music was still calm as the 8 celestial demonic chords reached its peak. Kacha, the jade crown on Chu Kuangren's head was shattered by the impact. His hair fell and danced in the wind like a demonic god. 7th movement of the 8 celestial demonic chords, heavens and earth sync. The guqin music resounded and shook the heavens and earth. The surrounding emperors channeled their emperor weapons to fight against the guqin music. They did not expect Chu Kuangren to reach this level. That violent guqin music put them under a terrifying pressure. 8th movement of the 8 celestial demonic chords, grand silent sound. The final song rang out. A soundless sound erupted and charged out with mysterious Taoist patterns. The power of the emperor weapons had also reached its peak. With this final powerful collision, a terrifying explosion was heard. The void was blasted apart, and all the emperors were blasted away. Pft, pft, pft. The emperors were injured one after another, and clouds of blood mist exploded in the air. Chu Kuangren seized the opportunity. Once the descendant self-sword was activated, his figure turned into a phantom and flew into the crowd. Next, Chu Kuangren slashed at an emperor. Before the emperor could recover from the impact, he was met with Chu Kuangren's most ferocious counterattack. Before he could even react, his body was torn apart by the sword ray, and he died. Meanwhile, Chu Kuangren's figure disappeared into the void and reappeared in front of another Emperor Realm cultivator. With the same sword strike, the Emperor Realm cultivator fell as well. Next, third, with the descendant self-sword in his hand, Chu Kuangren's black hair danced wildly in the wind as his sword ray blossomed. It was as if the Grim Reaper had arrived to reap lives. In the blink of an eye, 6 Emperor Realm experts had perished on the spot. Terror appeared in the eyes of the remaining sovereigns, and they hurriedly activated their Taoist aura to seal the space. Then they charged towards Chu Kuangren once again. Dark God above, void-shattering slash. The great dark pontiff roared and unleashed a slash at Chu Kuangren. Just a few days ago, the two of them were still wreaking havoc in the Radiant Ancestors' land. But now, they were drawing their swords at each other, fighting to the death. Life was truly full of wonders. However, Chu Kuangren did not have the time to lament about this. Since they had attacked him, they were now his mortal enemies. There was no doubt about this. 10,000 Daos. Chu Kuangren's avatar formed behind him, and the power of the four supreme Daoist physiques erupted, instantly shattering the great Dark Pontiff's sword ray and sending him flying again. Although the great Dark Pontiff had a strong cultivation base, he could no longer hold on after suffering so many injuries, and his combat strength was greatly reduced. Just when Chu Kuangren was about to follow up with another attack, a black figure suddenly appeared in front of him. It was a burly man with horns on his head, and his aura was extremely ferocious. He unleashed a punch that set off gusts of wind in the air. That was the Emperor of the Ox Demon Clan. Cosmos Reversal. Chu Kuangren yelled and unleashed a punch of his own. With a loud explosion, the two fists instantly collided, and the huge impact set off an even more intense storm. Although the Emperor of the Ox Demon Clan had a strong physical body, he could not help but scream under the terrifying power of the Cosmos Reversal. The bones in his arm were broken, and the white bone on his elbow pierced through his flesh. He was drenched in blood as he was sent flying. Divine radiance illuminates the world. Wind Cloud Slash. 5 elements capturing technique. The Holy Light Pontiff, the Wind Cloud Sword Emperor, and the Wang Clan's Emperor attacked again, and several terrifying surges of energy surged towards Chu Kuangren. Chu Kuangren stood proudly in the air as Daoist rhymes gathered around him, almost forming solid Daoist patterns. He clapped his palms together, and 2 vortexes appeared in the middle of his palms, completely devouring the surges of energy. Heaven Vortex. The Heaven Vortex dispelled the great Dark Pontiff's attacks. The 10,000 avatar was not idle either. They too unleashed a punch, and the combined power of the 4 supreme Daoist physiques erupted. The emperors were instantly blasted away. Sky-piercing demonic flame. The Emperor of the Demon Clan let out an angry roar, and tossed the Great Seal in his hand into the air. The Great Seal suddenly burned with black hellfire, and with an extremely majestic impact, it came crashing down on Chu Kuangren. For Divine Primordial Sword, Chu Kuangren unleashed his supreme divine technique again. The 4 sword shadows soared into the sky and landed on the Great Seal, and the hellfire on it gradually disintegrated under the impact of the 4 divine powers. Then the 10,000 avatar unleashed a punch on the Great Seal and sent it flying. Amidst the explosion, the Great Seal was sent flying and smashed onto the Emperor of the Demon Clan. The Emperor of the Demon Clan was smashed into a mountain range along with the seal, causing dust to rise everywhere. In the distance, many people watched the battle with drool in their mouths. Of the dozen or so emperors who attacked, Chu Kuangren had already killed nearly half of them, and the rest were suppressed by him. This kind of scene was too sensational. How can this be? Is this person really that invincible? This is too scary. Oh my god, is Chu Kuangren on drugs or something? Is he really that powerful? If this goes on, he'll kill all the emperors. The crowd was in disbelief. With more than a dozen top-notch emperors attacking, it should be an unparalleled force that could sweep through the emperor's path. But right now, it was a genius of the younger generation who was being suppressed to death. The unparalleled emperors had encountered an even more unparalleled existence. Runes God's domain. At that moment, a sudden roar came from the void. Xiao Fu Huang from the land of runes let out a roar. Lines of mysterious runic patterns quickly spread out with him as the center, turning into a giant rune that covered a 10-kilometer radius. Chu Kuangren suddenly felt a great pressure on his body. Whether it was his spiritual power, Emperor's Qi, or his Taoist Tao, he could not unleash his full power. Oh, what an interesting rune. He was slightly surprised. The Myriad Talisman catalog did not record such a rune. Is this a hidden technique of the Land of Runes? The Myriad Talisman catalog that he had was only a copy of it. The core runes were not recorded in the Myriad Talisman catalog. Xiao Fu Huang's Taoist talisman was probably one of them. Destruction Rune. Chu Kuangren activated the Destruction Rune in an attempt to destroy this rune. However, the destruction rune, which had always been effective against runes, was ineffective against this rune. It's no use. Your destruction rune is indeed mysterious, but my god's trapping domain rune is also mysterious. With my power, no matter how strong you are, you'll still be suppressed. Now, accept your death obediently. Xiao Fu Huang said coldly. That Taoist talisman was his trump card. He would not use it unless it was absolutely necessary. However, when he used it, he could often turn the tide. He believed that this time would not be an exception. Chapter 622. Once the God-confining domain talisman appeared, the mysterious power of the runes instantly enveloped Chu Kuangren, suppressing his spiritual power and cultivation base. Even the power of his Taoist Tao was greatly reduced. Everyone, this talisman has consumed too much of my energy. I'll leave him to you guys for now. Xiao Fu Huang said to the Wind Cloud Sword Sovereign and the others. Don't worry, Xiao Fu Huang. I'll kill him today. Kill him. Chu Kuangren, you must die today. The Wind Cloud Sword Sovereign and the others charged forward again. Chu Kuangren, who was suppressed by the God-confining domain talisman, was no longer as powerful as before. Under the violent attacks of the emperors with emperor weapons, he gradually fell into a disadvantageous position. Wind Cloud Sword Slash. Divine radiance illuminates the world. Several attacks were unleashed, and Chu Kuangren was blasted away. However, his physical body was too strong. Even if his spiritual power, Taoist Tao, and Emperor's Qi were all suppressed by the God-confining domain talisman, his powerful physical body still gave him unparalleled combat strength. Although he was at a disadvantage, he did not show any signs of losing. The more the emperors fought, the more frightened they became. At this stage, he still has no signs of losing. Just how terrifying was this guy? Is he even human? We can't let this go on. Xiao Fu Huang's God-confining domain talisman won't last long. If we don't take this opportunity to kill him, we won't have another chance when this talisman disappears. The Grand Pope of Radiance had a determined look in his eyes. Suddenly, a surge of divine radiant flame appeared on his body, and he chanted piously, "O God of Radiance, your humble servant is here with the divine flame, begging for your arrival." The Grand Pope of Radiance did not hesitate to sacrifice his lifespan to summon a god. Suddenly, surges of divine radiant flame spread out from the Grand Pope's body like a tidal wave, igniting the void. Amidst the endless divine flames, an illusory figure appeared. Its golden eyes swept across the battlefield, and its terrifying aura shocked everyone. Is that a god? It's the divine radiant god. Does the Radiant Church really have a god? How terrifying. The Radiant Church can really summon the power of a god. Don't stop me, I want to join them. When some cultivators saw the radiant god, they instinctively felt a sense of reverence and couldn't help but want to worship him. Some of them even knelt down in the direction of the god of light and praised the miracle, as if they had become devout believers in an instant. On the other side, the Dark Pope gnashed his teeth. You've already done so much. If I still don't make a move, it won't make sense. A powerful dark aura erupted from his body as he chanted devoutly, God of darkness above, your lowly believer. The terrifying power of darkness spread out, and a huge black abyss suddenly appeared in the void. A majestic black figure slowly walked out of it. It was dark and deep, as if there was no light at all. Only his eyes were as bright as the stars. A divine power that was not inferior to the God of Light poured out from the figure. It was the God of Darkness that the Thule society believed in. The wills of the two great gods appeared in the world, shaking the heavens. The surrounding cultivators were all shocked by the vast divine aura. Some of them whose Tao hearts were unstable knelt on the spot and kowtowed. The emperors were also a little fearful. The techniques of these two religions are indeed extraordinary. Is this the god that they're talking about? I wonder who's stronger compared to the rumored emperors. As ancient orthodoxies, these emperors had some understanding of the gods, so they did not worship them as much as the others. What they were in awe of was the other party's power. The two gods each stood on one side. The two forces of light and darkness met in the void, resisting each other as equals. The moment the gods' eyes met, they were about to attack each other. The forces of light and darkness could not merge. It was not only the beliefs of the two religions, but also the relationship between the two gods. The moment they met, they were about to fight each other. They both thought that they were summoned to fight each other. When the two great popes saw that, their expressions changed, and they quickly stopped them. "My God, the heretic is over there." The great pope pointed at Chu Kuangren and said, "If they were to fight, they would become a laughing stock." "Oh, it's you." The divine light god glanced at Chu Kuangren, and sensed that the other party's aura was the same one that had shattered his will clone in the past. At that thought, a cold glint flashed across his eyes. Meanwhile, the divine light god looked at Chu Kuangren with a deep gaze. "I can't believe there's a day where I'll join forces with the divine light god. This is unbelievable." However, their doppelgangers were summoned to help the two supreme pontiffs eliminate their enemies. As for who their enemies were and who they were working with, it was not that important. "Heretic slay." The divine light god pointed a finger at Chu Kuangren. The divine light god also unleashed a black torrent. The joint attack of the consciousness clones of the two gods was so powerful that none of the sovereigns present could withstand it. Even Chu Kuangren could not help but be sent flying hundreds of feet away. Even his incredibly tough body could not help but suffer some damage. The Wind Cloud Sword Emperor, the Demonic Emperor, and the others also attacked one after another. Sword Chi, Saber Rays, and many other things were unleashed, wanting to kill Chu Kuangren. In the distance, Lung Mingyu, Red Moon Lan Yu, and the others in the Seven Emotions sect watched with their hearts in their throats. Heavenly Reversal. Chu Kuangren raised his hand and unleashed an invincible technique, but he was still pushed back. He had fallen into a disadvantageous position. The surrounding cultivators were almost certain of the outcome. "Heretic, I'll kill you with my next move," the divine light god said indifferently as his boundless divine aura slammed into the void like a tidal wave. The divine light god also raised his hand, and a terrifying dark energy gathered. With the god confinement talisman and the two gods joining forces, the surrounding emperors were also gathering their strength and preparing to attack. Chu Kuangren seemed to be in a desperate situation. However, at that moment, he suddenly let out a long roar. "Gods? Do you think you're worthy of being called gods? Do you think you're worthy of taking my life?" As he roared, Chu Kuangren's aura began to rise, and a terrifying Taoist rhyme emanated from his body. All the emperors could not help but narrow their eyes. This aura, it's the ultimate Tao. He's broken through. His Tao has reached the ultimate Tao. The emperor's expressions changed. The ultimate Tao was the highest level before the emperor Tao, just like how those below the emperor realm could only gather 9 surges of emperor's chi. The ultimate Tao was the highest realm anyone below the emperor realm could reach. Haha, emperors, thank you very much. If it weren't for your continuous suppression, it would have taken me a long time to reach the ultimate Tao, Chu Kuangren said with a laugh. His Tao had already reached the peak of the Great Perfection realm, and he was only half a step away from stepping into the ultimate realm. Now, under the siege of the emperors and the collision of Taos, his Tao had finally reached the ultimate realm. The emperors were even more shocked when they heard what he said. Chu Kuangren was using them to hone his Tao, sharpen his own Tao in battle. Facing the siege of more than 10 emperors, he still had the ability to do such a thing. Did the other party even put them in his eyes? Chapter 623. Within the God Confinement Talisman, Chu Kuangren's aura continued to rise. In the battle against the dozens of emperors, he continued to polish his Tao, and finally, he had taken the final step. His Tao of invincibility had reached its peak. How terrifying was the ultimate Tao of invincibility! Chu Kuangren's every move, even if it was just a gentle lift of his hand, had a horrifying power that could crush all living beings and overturn the sun and moon. The God Confinement Talisman shook violently as if it was about to collapse. Xiao Fu Huang let out a low growl and channeled the spiritual power and Emperor's chi in his body to its limit to barely maintain it. "You won't be able to maintain this talisman." Chu Kuangren chuckled. "I'll show you my talisman." He raised his hand and gathered the spiritual chi from the heavens and earth. Suddenly, countless colorful patterns formed in the void and turned into a huge talisman. The runes swirled and contained a mysterious Taoist rhyme. It vaguely reflected natural phenomena such as mountains, rivers, the sun, and the moon. What talisman is this? Xiao Fu Huang's expression changed. Even with his mastery in talisman Dao, he could not recognize this rune. It was a rune that he had never seen or heard of before. Heavenly Nine Dragons Transformation. Chu Kuangren growled and immediately used the legendary rune that he had obtained not long ago. The colorful runes in the void gathered the spiritual chi from the heavens and earth, and turned into 9 ferocious and domineering colorful dragons. The 9 dragons, red, orange, yellow, green, cyan, blue, purple, black, and white, circled around Chu Kuangren and let out thunderous roars. The dragon poise resounded across tens of thousands of kilometers, shaking the sun, moon, and stars. Even the divine poise could not overshadow it. This rune can turn spiritual chi into dragon chi. Xiao Talisman Emperor gasped. At that moment, something even more shocking happened. The 9 dragons flew towards Chu Kuangren, and the majestic dragon chi surged into his body, causing his aura to skyrocket again. If what he had experienced before was the improvement of his Tao, then what he was experiencing now was the sublimation of his cultivation and spiritual energy. How strong was Chu Kuangren's cultivation base? Having condensed 9 surges of Emperor's Qi, Chu Kuangren was already at the top of the Emperor's, enough to sweep through the Emperor's path. However, now that the 9 streams of Dragon Qi had entered his body, the 9 streams of Emperor Qi were raging, and the supreme foundation in his body shone with boundless divine light. In addition to the 9 wisps of Emperor Qi, there were also 9 wisps of Dragon Qi. Moreover, the power of these 9 surges of Dragon Essence was no weaker than the 9 surges of Emperor's Essence. In other words, Chu Kuangren now had the equivalent of 18 surges of Emperor's Essence within his body. Although it was only temporary, it was terrifying enough. As Chu Kuangren's aura skyrocketed, the God Confinement Talisman could no longer hold on and exploded. Xiao Fu Huang suffered a backlash on the spot when the talisman markings were destroyed, and he spat out a mouthful of blood as he was blasted flying before lying on the ground weakly. Without the suppression of the God-confining talisman, Chu Kuangren was no longer restrained. His spiritual power, cultivation base, and Taoist aura of extreme Taoism filled the entire realm. The entire world was shaking. God, are you ready to be beaten up by me again? Chu Kuangren's gaze was like lightning as he stared at the divine light deity. He took a step forward, and the power of the supreme body of the way erupted. 10,000 Dharma forms condensed, and the power of the 9 emperors and 9 dragons was added to it. The Dharma form raised its hand and unleashed a punch, and the void instantly exploded. The divine light god coldly shot out a beam of light, but the terrifying fist energy instantly shattered the beam of light. The punch landed on his body, causing cracks to form on his body, and soon his body was covered with cracks. Heretic, you've successfully provoked my wrath. I hereby swear that one day, I'll let you have a taste of the divine punishment. The divine light god's tone was extremely cold. Divine punishment? Even the heavenly punishment can't do anything to me. So what can your divine punishment do to me? Chu Kuangren sneered. His Dharma form unleashed another punch. This time, it was infused with the heavenly punishment Taoist rhyme. The majestic heavenly might directly overpowered the so-called divine might. The moment the heavenly punishment Taoist rhyme appeared, the expressions of the 2 deities changed drastically. Heavenly punishment? You're a heavenly executioner. Impossible. The 2 deities looked as if they had seen something unbelievable. However, before they could say anything, the myriad Dharma form's energy had already landed on the divine light god's body, forcefully blowing him up. Most of the remaining fist energy continued forward and landed on the divine light god's body, shattering him into pieces. Before he completely dissipated, he stared at Chu Kuangren with a vague fear in his eyes. How could a proud deity show fear towards a human? That was something that the great Pope of Darkness and the great Pope of Light could not believe. It was even more shocking than when Chu Kuangren destroyed the deity's shadow. Heavenly executioner? What does that mean? Chu Kuangren frowned. Could this heavenly punishment Taoist rhyme have some other meaning that he did not know? Who are you? The great Pope of Darkness stared at Chu Kuangren and asked. Me? I'm just an ordinary cultivator. Chu Kuangren chuckled. With a lift of his hand, the myriad Dharma forms grabbed the great Pope of Darkness. The latter could not resist at all, and was instantly caught by the Dharma form's giant palm. With a crack he was crushed into a pile of meat. His other hand slapped towards the great Pope of Light. The great Pope of Light channeled all his energy to resist, but it was futile. With a loud explosion, the strongest Pope of the Divine Radiant Church was slapped to death by Chu Kuangren like a fly. That's too cruel. The rest of the spectators felt their hearts tremble. Killing an emperor was like killing a fly. Moreover, that was the great Pope of the Divine Radiant Church. Was there anything more terrifying than that? Run! The Wind Cloud Sword Emperor, the Wangs, and the others had long lost their will to fight after witnessing that scene. They turned into streams of light and fled. Running away now would be a little too stupid. Chu Kuangren said calmly. Suddenly, countless runic lights circulated between the heavens and the earth. Tens of thousands of runes hovered in the void, blocking the path of the emperors one by one. When did this happen? There's no way he could have arranged such a large amount of runic energy in one go. He's been preventing us from escaping since the beginning. The emperors were shocked. What did that mean? It meant that Chu Kuangren had long since won this battle. They were the only ones who thought that they would win. Now that they thought about it, it was too ironic that they did not know that they were already someone else's prey. They even called themselves the Hunters. For Divine Primordial Sword, Raging God's Fist, Chu Kuangren raised his hand and activated all sorts of divine abilities and emperor techniques. With his current strength of the 9 emperors of the 9 dragons, and the ultimate Tao of invincibility, even the most basic attack could kill an emperor. Using these cultivation arts was even more terrifying. Mysterious Tao patterns gathered in the void like a giant net, trapping all the sovereigns within. With the addition of the seal of the runes, the sovereigns had no way to escape. It was originally a battle against Chu Kuangren, but now it had turned into a one-sided massacre by Chu Kuangren against the emperors. The spectating cultivators from afar could not describe the scene in front of them. They were overwhelmed with emotions, but they were speechless. Chu Kuangren is truly invincible. One of the cultivators gulped and said with a trembling voice, "Invincible? Who dared to say they were invincible? Who dared to say they were invincible?" In the Emperor's path, no Sky Pride had ever dared to call themselves invincible. But now, they had seen a truly invincible person. At least, no one below the Emperor realm could defeat him. Chapter 624. Cough cough. You're an anomaly. You really are an anomaly. The Poison Emperor was choked by Chu Kuangren, and could not stop coughing. Among the emperors present, he was the only one left. The pestilence evil physique is a good research material. Chu Kuangren chuckled. He clenched his fist, and a surge of spiritual power gushed out, crushing his opponent's heart. By killing him, this supreme Taoist physique could be preserved in its most complete form, so that Chu Kuangren could study it more easily. He then tossed his opponent's corpse into his yin and yang ring. Then, he used his mind power to collect the other people's yin and yang rings and emperor weapons. This battle could be considered to have come to an end. Just as Chu Kuangren was about to leave, he suddenly saw Li Salong, who was lying on the ground pretending to be dead. He walked up to him. He smirked. "You're not dead yet." The energy fluctuations from the battle between him and the emperors were terrifying. Yet Li Salong was lying there unscathed despite being heavily injured. Chu Kuangren was surprised by his luck. Upon hearing Chu Kuangren's voice, Li Salong's body trembled violently, and his eyes were filled with extreme fear. "Chu Kuangren, please let me go. I won't dare to go against you anymore. Just treat me like a fart and let me go. Please, I beg you," Li Salong said while weeping. He was afraid. He had witnessed everything. He saw Chu Kuangren's almost invincible figure, and he could only lie there like a pile of mud. The gap between them was so huge that it made him despair. Even if he gave it his all, he would not be able to hurt Chu Kuangren. Let you go? You'll have to ask the others if they'll let you go. Chu Kuangren glanced at the 7 Emotions Sect's disciples beside him. They stared at each other with hatred in their eyes. Brother Chu, you don't have to trouble yourself. Leave him to us. One of the 7 Emotions Sect's disciples sneered. All right. Chu Kuangren did not refuse. After he left, the group of 7 Emotions Sect's disciples walked up to Li Salong and kicked him mercilessly. You think you're worthy of the maiden sage? Why don't you take a good look at yourself first? You're a toad lusting after a swan. You want to cause chaos in the 7 Emotions Sect, right? Come on. You even brought the Poison Emperor to kill us? You're pretty awesome. Soon, under the trampling of the disciples of the 7 Emotions Sect, Li Salong died with endless grievances. In the main hall of the 7 Emotions Sect, when Chu Kuangren walked in, Ing Huang hurriedly brought some people to welcome him. Brother Chu has resolved this crisis for my 7 Emotions Sect. The 7 Emotions Sect is very grateful. Ing Huang cupped her hands and said respectfully. She glanced at Chu Kuangren. Aside from the disheveled hair, the other party's white robes remained the same, and the aura on his body gradually stabilized, without the slightest hint of disorder. After fighting a few emperor warriors, he was not injured at all. The scene caused Ing Huang to be even more shocked. This person was simply a monster. Thinking of this, she could not help but feel even more awe. Chu Kuangren glanced at her and said, This time the 7 Emotions Sect has suffered because of me. You don't have to be so courteous. You can't blame fellow Taoist Chu for this. Who would have thought that the people of the sword race would be so shameless to actually use such a method to force you? They chatted for a while. After that, Chu Kuangren decided to temporarily stay in the 7 Emotions Sect for a few days. After the battle, his Tao had reached its peak. However, it was a little rushed to break through in the midst of battle, so he needed some time to stabilize it. Besides that, he also wanted to study the Poison Emperor's plague evil physique. While Chu Kuangren was staying in the 7 Emotions Sect, the news that he had single-handedly killed more than 10 top martial emperors had spread throughout the entire Emperor's Road, and countless people were horrified by it. The sky prides from the other factions were even more overshadowed. In this era, they had completely become Chu Kuangren's background, living in his shadow. After that battle, Chu Kuangren had completely established his position in the Emperor's Road. Whether it was the forbidden sky prides or the emperors of the ancient orthodoxies, as long as they were not emperors, almost no one dared to provoke him. Inside the 7 Emotions Sect, Chu Kuangren was sitting cross-legged in a room. He was stabilizing his Tao. After the battle with the emperor warriors, his Tao had reached its peak. The next step was to prove his Tao and become an emperor. Most of the martial monarchs had ascended to the martial monarch realm on Mount Monarch, and borrowed the force of the heavenly Tao to achieve the martial monarch realm. Rumor had it that there were some emperors who did not need to ascend the emperor's mountain or borrow the power of the heavenly Tao. Instead, they relied on their own understanding and cultivation to prove their Tao. This method of proving one's Tao was known as using strength. However, no one knew how to do it. Throughout the ages, there were too few people who had used strength to become emperors. Moreover, everyone's method was different and unpredictable. Some people meditated under a tree for 3 days and 3 nights, and when the sun rose, they became emperors. Some people fished by the river for more than 100 years, and finally caught a golden water dragon. They rode on the dragon and became emperors. There was also a scholar who had no cultivation base but read all 3,000 Taoist scrolls. When he finally cultivated, he became an emperor. In less than 100 years, he somehow became an emperor. However, no matter which example it was, every person who used strength to become an emperor had a terrifying foundation before they became an emperor. They were invincible among their peers, and they could even fight against emperors. After becoming an emperor, they became the best among the emperors. Using strength to prove one's Tao. Perhaps this is one way. Chu Kuangren opened his eyes and murmured. However, he was still lacking in knowledge in this area. He planned to borrow the 7 Emotions Sect's foundation to look up information on this. He was not in a hurry. After stabilizing his Tao, he took out the Poison Emperor's corpse and studied the mysteries of the Taoist physiques. The process was very smooth. Although the Poison Emperor was dead, his Taoist physique was still there. After some research, Chu Kuangren soon mastered it. Since then, Chu Kuangren had 5 supreme Taoist physiques. When should I call the mystic sword guard over? She has the Fallen Darkness physique, which is also a supreme Taoist physique. Don't waste it. Nangong Huang's Yinyang God Eye and Morong Xian's Crimson Sun physique are also supreme Taoist physiques. By the way, after Shang Qingshue's fortuitous encounter at Skylake Mountain, her Frost physique has also been upgraded to a supreme Taoist physique. Chu Kuangren thought about the Taoist physiques around him. If he could understand all of them, it would be of great help to him. Needless to say, the power of the 10,000 Taoist avatars would definitely increase. After carefully thinking about what he had to do in the future, Chu Kuangren came out of his closed-door meditation. The first thing he did was to borrow the 7 Emotions Sect's library, wanting to read up on the Taoist path through strength. The 7 Emotions Sect did not reject his request. They generously opened up the library for him to read. As an ancient orthodoxy, the 7 Emotions Sect had a deep heritage. The scriptures in the sect were countless, covering all aspects. Among them, there were many about the Taoist path through strength. However, after some reading, the conclusion he obtained made Chu Kuangren frown. According to the scriptures, the Taoist path through strength mostly happened in ancient times when the Taoist path was at its peak. It had not happened since the ancient times, and in recent times there was not even an emperor, let alone the Taoist path through strength. In other words, to achieve the Taoist path through strength, one must be in an era when the Taoist path was at its peak, and the probability of that happening was very small. As for the Dharma-ending era, it was impossible. Unfortunately, although this era was the era of great battles, the Taoist path manifestation had only just begun a few years ago. It was in the transitional stage between the Dharma-ending era and the Taoist path prosperity era, and even the emperors had not officially been born yet. It was almost impossible to achieve the Taoist path through strength under such circumstances. What a coincidence. What I like to do the most is to challenge the impossible. Chu Kuangren closed the book and smiled faintly. Chapter 625. After learning about how to prove one's Tao through strength, Chu Kuangren was already thinking about how to walk this path. Since ancient times, those who had proven their Tao through strength were all people with extremely strong foundations. They were invincible among those in the same realm. Chu Kuangren's foundation was already very strong. With 9 strands of Emperor Qi and the ultimate Tao, almost no sovereign was a match for him. However, he was not sure if this was enough to prove his Tao through strength. He wanted to continue accumulating. To do that, he needed resources. There aren't any great opportunities of fortune in the Emperor Road for now. It's not easy to find resources. Chu Kuangren scanned his yin and yang rings with his spiritual thoughts. He had more or less obtained some resources from killing a group of sovereigns. However, those were far from enough. It was not even as much as his trip to the Forbidden Barren Wasteland. Forbidden Barren Wasteland? Did he have to make another trip to the Forbidden Barren Wasteland? However, other than the core area, there were no great opportunities of fortune in the rest of the areas. Do I have to wait for the Emperor Mountain to open and become an emperor there? Chu Kuangren thought to himself. Proving one's Tao through strength was one way. After becoming an emperor, one's combat strength would be the strongest. However, if it did not work out, he would not be too stubborn. Becoming an emperor at the Emperor Mountain was another way as well. He just had one more choice compared to the others. However, the Emperor Mountain had not opened yet. He wanted to try proving his Tao through strength and see if he could succeed. Resources, I've got it. Chu Kuangren suddenly remembered the Ancestral Land Foundation he had obtained when he wreaked havoc in the Holy Ancestral Land. That Ancestral Land Foundation was not inferior to treasures like the primeval Taoist gem. Was that not a ready-made resource? Sword Tribe, Wang Clan, Bai Clan Demonic Tribe. These forces wanted to kill him. He could not just pretend that nothing had happened. If he did, He would not be Chu Kuangren anymore. It's impolite not to reciprocate. Sword Tribe, Demonic Tribe by Clan Wang Clan. It's time for us to settle our debts. Chu Kuangren grinned. Beside him, Lan Yu saw Chu Kuangren smile and could not help but sigh. These forces were unlucky. However, she did not have any sympathy or pity. This was the result of offending the young master. Oh, by the way, Lan Yu, I got this from the Holy Light's chief sovereign. There are some Holy Light attribute treasures inside, as well as his insights into the Holy Light Tao. There's also an Emperor weapon inside, which should be helpful to you. Chu Kuangren took out a yin and yang ring and handed it to Lan Yu. Lan Yu took it. Thank you, young master. Back then, I even gave you the foundation stone of the radiant ancestral land, right? Right now, your cultivation is nearing the bottleneck. I alone am enough to deal with the Sword Tribe. You should go into seclusion for a while. All right. After that, Lan Yu parted ways with Chu Kuangren for the time being, and headed to the place where Nan Gonghuang and the others were in closed-door meditation to improve themselves. Sword Race. Ever since the Sword Tribe leader found out about the battle at the Seven Emotions sect, he had completely lost the courage to go against Chu Kuangren. He still could not understand why such a terrifying sky pride like Chu Kuangren would appear in this world. An anomaly, an anomaly. The Sword Tribe leader looked up at the sky and sighed. He stood at the edge of a cliff and looked down at the vast Sword Race territory below. There were many talented people in this territory, and their sword chi filled the sky. However, he did not feel happy at all. Now that the Sword Tribe had lost their taboo, they had lost their top-notch sky pride. They had lost the right to compete for this era's Emperor's throne. Looks like this era's Emperor's throne is definitely yours. However, do you really think you can sit back and relax after becoming an Emperor? The true strength of the Sword Tribe is the Emperors. The Emperors can't interfere with the affairs of those below the Emperor realm. However, once you become an Emperor, do you really think the Sword Tribe's Emperors, Wang Clan's Emperors, and the others will let you go so easily? The Sword Tribe leader muttered. He had given up on the idea of going against Chu Kuangren, but that did not mean he did not hate him anymore. On the contrary, he hated him to the core. However, he could no longer exact his revenge. He could only pin his hopes on the Emperors. Chu Kuangren, let's see how long you can stay in your glory. The Sword Tribe leader snorted and was about to leave the cliff. However, the long sword at his waist suddenly began to vibrate uncontrollably. What's going on? The Sword Tribe leader was shocked. Soon, he realized that he was not the only one. Every swordsman in the Sword Tribe had their swords vibrated uncontrollably. What's going on? Why are my swords vibrating? It's as if these swords are afraid of something. By the heavens, what does this mean? For a moment, the entire Sword Tribe fell into an inexplicable panic. At that moment, some of the swordsmen seemed to have noticed something. Their eyes widened as they looked into the distance. From afar, a figure was slowly walking towards the Sword Tribe's territory. That person was dressed in white and had black hair. He was extremely handsome and looked like a celestial being. What shocked the Sword Tribe even more was that the closer this person got to the Sword Tribe's territory, the more their swords vibrated. An uncontrollable sense of panic spread in every swordsman's heart. This was because they had already guessed the identity of this person. The only thing that can resonate with countless swords in this world is the exquisite 9 orifices sword heart. After the Taoist's death, there's only one exquisite 9 orifices sword heart left in this world, and that's Chu Kuangren. There's no other person besides Chu Kuangren who possesses such sword Tao. What's this person doing in the Sword Tribe? Gulp. Don't tell me he's here as a guest. Don't just stand there. Quick, activate the Sword Tribe's Great Formation. One of the Sword Tribe elders yelled. Everyone in the Emperor Road knew about the feud between the Sword Tribe and Chu Kuangren. Now that he had suddenly come to the Sword Tribe, no one would think that he was just here as a guest. Moreover, the sense of panic emanating from the swords in their hands made it more likely that he was here to seek revenge. Facing Chu Kuangren, no one dared to be careless. They had a hunch. The Sword Tribe's great calamity was coming. Whoosh! A sword ray swept down from the cliff and landed in front of everyone. It stared at Chu Kuangren, who was slowly walking towards them from afar. "Everyone be on guard," the Sword Tribe leader yelled. At that moment, the Sword Tribe's great defensive formation had been activated. Surges of sword chi leaped out from the Sword Tribe's territory and intertwined in the void, covering the Sword Tribe's territory like an inverted bowl. The surrounding vegetation was reduced to ashes in front of this great formation. Chu Kuangren remained calm at the sight. His footsteps did not stop. He was still walking at a steady pace, as if he was here for a vacation. There was no sign of hostility or seriousness on his face. However, as he approached, all of the Sword Tribe's swordsmen felt an extremely terrifying pressure enveloping them. It was not only a physical pressure, but also a psychological one. When Chu Kuangren arrived before the mega formation, he stopped in his tracks and looked at the Sword Tribe leader inside the formation. He said, "Sword Tribe leader, we've finally met officially. What exactly do you want to do this time?" The Sword Tribe leader stared at Chu Kuangren and asked coldly, "It's simple. Apologize to me." Chapter 626. It's simple. Apologize to me. Chu Kuangren said calmly. The Swordsman Tribe leader's expression turned grim. "Are you kidding me? Because of you, the Swordsman Taoist is dead. The mystic sword guards in Jian Changfeng have betrayed us and lost the right to fight for the throne. Even the Wind Cloud Sword Emperor is gone. Now you want us to apologize to you?" The Swordsman Tribe leader almost roared out the rest of his words. Because of Chu Kuangren, the Swordsman Tribe had suffered great losses. Not only were the Forbidden Grounds gone, but so were the other peerless sky prides. Even the strongest Swordsman Emperor had died in Chu Kuangren's hands. Now Chu Kuangren had come to the Swordsman Tribe and wanted them to apologize. As an ancient orthodoxy, no one had ever dared to provoke the Swordsman Tribe. Since when had they ever suffered such humiliation? "Did I ask the Swordsman Tribe to provoke me? How dare you act so righteously when you're the one in the wrong? Ha, what a joke." Chu Kuangren's eyes turned cold. The descendant self-sword at his waist was unsheathed. The purple sword ray streaked across the sky and landed on the Swordsman Tribe's defensive formation. The large array formed by countless sword chis trembled violently under this powerful sword. And then it exploded with a loud bang. The Swordsman Tribe's formation was broken. The formation's destruction set off waves of sword chi that swept in all directions. The entire Swordsman Tribe's territory was instantly torn into pieces. An incredibly terrifying sword-based Taoist rhyme enveloped the Swordsman Tribe's territory. The swords in the hands of every swordsman trembled, as they sent a message of fear and terror to their masters. "Now let me teach you what it means to admit your mistakes and stand at attention when you're being beaten." Chu Kuangren snorted and appeared in front of the Swordsman Tribe leader in a flash. He then placed the descendant self-sword on his neck. During this entire process, the Swordsman Tribe leader could not react at all. His sword Dao was completely suppressed by Chu Kuangren. With Chu Kuangren's ultimate Dao and the exquisite Nine Orifices sword heart, not a single swordsman in the entire Emperor's path dared to use sword Dao in front of Chu Kuangren. Even the Swordsman Tribe, which was the best in sword Dao, was no exception. Gulp. The Swordsman Tribe leader could not help but gulp. The Kunwu sword was pressed against his neck, feeling extremely cold. The sharp sword chi directly drew a sword radiance, and blood flowed out. "How do you want us to apologize?" The sword race's patriarch grit his teeth and said. Chu Kuangren was too domineering now that the swordsmen did not have the strength to fight him. Hence they had no choice but to give in. "How do I apologize?" "That's simple. I'm in need of some resources recently. I want the foundation of your sword race's ancestral ground," Chu Kuangren said indifferently. Hearing this, the sword race leader's pupils constricted. Impossible. With a poochie sound, the sound of a sword cutting through flesh rang out in the ears of the sword race patriarch. A cold feeling came from his neck, as if something was continuously gushing out. Dripping wet, it was his blood. "Lord Patriarch, please speak cautiously." Chu Kuangren looked at the Swordsman Tribe leader and said in a serious tone. When the surrounding cultivators of the sword race caught sight of this, their faces turned green with anger. Their own clan leader was being threatened by someone with a sword on his neck. And yet, there was nothing they could do except watch from the sidelines. They didn't even dare to open their mouths. They were afraid. Thinking of this, he was furious, but at the same time, ashamed. The ancestral land of the Sword Clan is the resting place of our emperor. If we give the foundation to you, where will the emperor go? It's just changing a place to sleep. Chu Kuangren chuckled. The swordsman tribe leader almost vomited blood. Changing a place to sleep? How could it be that simple? The emperor's path restricted the emperor's path, so they could not easily make a move. Only in the ancestral land could they unleash their full power. The ancestral land was not only the resting place of the emperor's realm, but it was also the swordsman tribe's refuge in case of danger. Moreover, there were many important places in the ancestral land. For example, the Sword Catacomb, the Sword Lagoon, and other opportunities of fortune. If they gave the ancestral land's foundation to Chu Kuangren, it would be the same as destroying the entire ancestral land, destroying the opportunities of fortune that the swordsman tribe had inherited for countless years. Chu Kuangren was not only demolishing their homes, he was also shaking the swordsman tribe's foundation. I can give you the other resources of the swordsman tribe, but the foundation of the ancestral land is too important. I don't lack other resources, but I want the ancestral land's foundation, Chu Kuangren said, interrupting the swordsman tribe leader's words. Chu Kuangren, do you really have to go this far? Compared to you guys asking for my life, I'm already being very generous by only asking for your foundation. It's fine if you don't want to give it to me. It's not that difficult for me to destroy your entire swordsman tribe anyway. Chu Kuangren smiled, but his eyes were as cold as ice. If he really wanted to, it was not impossible for him to destroy the entire swordsman tribe. All right, I'll bring you to the ancestral land, the swordsman tribe leader said sullenly. Then he brought Chu Kuangren to the swordsman tribe's ancestral land. In the depths of the mountain range, there was a huge mountain peak that looked like a sword that was inserted into the ground. Countless sword chi surrounded the mountain peak. Chu Kuangren could sense that there was a spatial fluctuation within this mountain peak. There was another world within this mountain peak. Let go of me. I'll open the secret realm. The swordsman tribe leader said helplessly. There's no need for that. Since I've already taken the foundation, this place will be gone. I'll just have to break it open with my sword. Chu Kuangren lifted his arm, and a majestic sword chi shot out. Along with a terrifying surge of energy, the entire mountain peak shook violently, and a huge pitch-black mouth was slashed open in the void. Chu Kuangren no longer cared about the swordsman tribe leader. He took a step forward, and in a flash he dashed into the swordsman tribe's ancestral land. The remaining swordsman tribe leader collapsed to the ground. Without caring about the wound on his neck, he looked up to the sky and let out a long sigh. This is fate, this is fate. Inside the swordsman tribe's ancestral land, along with a loud noise, all the swordsman tribe emperors were jolted awake. They looked at the pitch-black mouth in the sky with a bewildered expression. Who's trespassing into the ancestral land? Who's so daring? A black-haired figure in a white robe stepped into the ancestral land. Chu Kuangren's gaze swept across the swordsman emperors, and then his spiritual thought surged and locked onto the location of the ancestral land's foundation. Soon, he locked onto his target and dashed towards a spot in the depths of the ancestral land. He was about to retrieve the foundation. Be *starred. Who gave you permission to be so presumptuous here? One of the swordsman tribe emperors snorted. He turned into a ray of sword ray and charged towards Chu Kuangren. However, before he could get close, Chu Kuangren raised his arm and unleashed a sword chi. The razor-sharp sword chi tore through the void, and that emperor was instantly torn apart by the sword chi, exploding into a cloud of blood mist. D****. How dare you wreak havoc in the swordsman tribe's ancestral land? D****. Who the hell are you? The swordsman tribe emperors were shocked. I'm Chu Kuangren, here to retrieve the swordsman tribe's ancestral land's foundation. Chu Kuangren said indifferently, and he immediately disappeared using the spatial conveyor technique. The remaining swordsman tribe emperors were shocked when they heard the name Chu Kuangren. They were no strangers to that name. They had already heard about the swordsman tribe leader killing the sword sovereign of Windcloud. However, they did not expect that Chu Kuangren would not only kill the sword sovereign of Windcloud, but also destroy their ancestral land's foundation. Chapter 627. In a flash, Chu Kuangren arrived at a pond deep within the swordsman's ancestral ground. There were countless swords buried there. It was the sword pool. It was one of the opportunities of fortune within the swordsman's ancestral ground. Chu Kuangren could keenly sense that there was an extremely dense and pure sword qi at the bottom of the sword pool. Rise! Chu Kuangren raised his hand and activated the exquisite 9 orifices sword heart's power. The water in the sword pool began to boil, and countless swords rose from the water and hovered in the air. Among them was a giant white sphere that was surrounded by countless swords like guards. Oh, the ancestral ground's foundation is protected by a sword formation. Chu Kuangren's gaze was indifferent as he increased the power of the exquisite 9 orifices sword heart. The countless swords trembled and retreated to the sides. The sword formation was destroyed on its own. Chu Kuangren then grabbed the white light orb from afar and turned it into a crystal-like longsword. It was not a physical sword qi, but a sword qi sword that was condensed from countless pure sword qi. Taking the essence of 10,000 swords and refining it into a sword qi to maintain the ancestral ground's operation. This sword pool is quite mysterious, Chu Kuangren said. After that, he took away the essence of 10,000 swords. The entire swordsman ancestral ground trembled, and the space around it became unstable. Chu Kuangren did not care, and continued to move forward. There were 3 foundations in the swordsman ancestral ground. The first foundation was the essence of 10,000 swords in the sword pool. The second foundation was an emperor weapon longsword. Chu Kuangren was a little disappointed. After all, he did not lack emperor weapons. What he needed was resources that could be absorbed to increase his cultivation. However, this emperor weapon was extremely powerful. Its emperor's aura was much stronger than any of the other emperor weapons in his possession. Obviously, emperor weapons were divided into different grades. As for this imperial armament, it was clearly a high-grade item among imperial armaments. That comforted Chu Kuangren a little. I hope the last foundation won't disappoint me, Chu Kuangren murmured. Soon, he arrived at the last foundation of the swordsman ancestral ground. It was a building that looked like a mausoleum. This was the swordsman tribe's sword tomb. Besides them, the emperors of the ancestral ground had also gathered here. It was impossible for them to watch Chu Kuangren destroy the swordsman tribe's ancestral land without doing anything. Hence, they had gathered together to deal with him. Chu Kuangren was not surprised at all. Chu Kuangren, if you wish to destroy the swordsman ancestral ground today, you'll have to step over our dead bodies. An emperor from the sword race coldly snorted. After that, the other emperors behind him stood behind him, forming a sword formation. 8 Desolation 6 Directions God-slaying sword formation. The emperor of the sword race roared out and activated the power of the sword formation. The sword-based Taoist rhymes that erupted from these sword emperors resonated with each other, and their sword qis gradually fused together. Die! The leading sword emperor raised his hand and slashed out. In an instant, the power of a dozen sword emperors overlapped and formed into a gigantic sword shadow that slashed towards Chu Kuangren. The terrifying sword pressure caused the surrounding void to explode in an instant. Your courage is commendable, but it's all in vain, Chu Kuangren said indifferently. As he raised his hand, the power of 4 elephants gushed out. Primordial sword of 4 elephants. The primordial sword of 4 elephants that was fused with the might of 9 surges of Emperor's essence erupted. The 2 gigantic sword shadows collided together, but the primordial sword of 4 elephants shattered the sword formation's sword shadows like a hot knife through butter. The rest of the sword shadow's energy continued to collide with the dozen or so emperors. The leading sword emperor instantly exploded into a mist of blood. The other emperors were also sent flying like kites with their strings cut. One by one, they fell to the ground and looked at Chu Kuangren in shock. How can his strength be so terrifying? 9 surges of Emperor's essence. He managed to cultivate 9 surges of Emperor's essence. Is this the strength that killed the Wind Cloud Sword Emperor? The group of Sword Emperors fell into despair. The strength that Chu Kuangren had displayed was too much for them to handle. Such strength was completely above them. Buzz, buzz, buzz. At that moment, the sword catacomb suddenly began to shake violently. A golden ray of light suddenly shot into the sky and landed in front of the group of sword rays. It was a golden skeleton. Golden light flowed around the skeleton's body, and a dense sword chi surrounded it. An extremely intense emperor's aura emanated from it. Oh, this is a sword emperor's corpse. Chu Kuangren's eyes lit up. I can't believe that the last foundation of the swordsman's ancestral ground is a sword emperor's corpse. He could sense that the aura of this corpse was closely connected to the swordsman's ancestral ground, as if they were one. Not only that, but he also sensed a slight threat from this sword emperor's corpse, which surprised him a little. He did not feel this way even when he was surrounded by the most powerful emperors in the emperor's path, but now he felt it from a corpse. Forefather. It's the forefather. The sword emperors were hopeful when they saw the sword emperor's corpse. The sword chi on the sword emperor's corpse flowed, and an emperor's will appeared. Then the sword chi intertwined and gradually formed flesh and blood. The corpse then turned into a handsome middle-aged man. This man was dressed in a golden robe, and he stood with his hands behind his back. An emperor's aura emanated from his body, making him look like a great emperor. Oh, a remnant consciousness of a dead emperor? Interesting. Chu Kuangren activated his Eye of Revelation, and soon, he knew the identity of this emperor and his current state. Sky Pride, you're very strong, but I can't sit back and watch you destroy the swordsman's ancestral ground. So make your move. The swordsman's emperor said. He raised his hand and grasped the air, and a sword that was dropped by a sword emperor appeared in his hand. With the sword in hand, the sword emperor's aura poured out. Ha! A mere remnant consciousness has such power. I'm looking forward to the emperor's realm now. Chu Kuangren laughed. He did not hesitate either. A huge colorful rune immediately formed. The 9 dragons' divine transformation talisman was formed again. 9 surges of dragon chi entered Chu Kuangren's body, causing his aura to skyrocket. With the descendant self sword in his hand, his aura was so strong that it was no weaker than the sword emperor's remnant consciousness. Sky Pride, you're indeed powerful. If you were born in my era, you might have been able to prove your Tao through strength. The swordsman's emperor had a look of admiration in his eyes. Even in this era, it's not impossible for me to do so, Chu Kuangren said proudly. He loved to challenge all kinds of impossible things, and he was good at breaking the world's common sense and creating miracles. Hearing the ambition in Chu Kuangren's words, the swordsman's emperor was even more impressed. However, a murderous intent gradually shot out from his eyes. It's a pity that you're going to die here today. You're just a remnant consciousness. Watch how I kill you. Chu Kuangren raised his sword and slashed. The power of the 9 emperors of the 9 dragons erupted and merged into the sword chi. The swordsman's emperor did not hesitate either. He raised his sword and slashed, and the emperor's aura erupted, faintly suppressing Chu Kuangren's Tao. The moment the 2 surges of sword chi collided, the entire swordsman's ancestral ground shook violently as if it would collapse at any moment. The swordsman's emperors immediately retreated, afraid that they would be affected. Chapter 628. Inside the swordsman tribe's ancestral grounds, Chu Kuangren had once again encountered a strong opponent. A swordsman emperor's remnant consciousness. Both of them engaged in a fierce battle. Their respective sword daos reflected each other, and the sound of their swords clashing reverberated endlessly. Moreover, every single collision was the ultimate confrontation of the sword Tao. Is this the Emperor's Tao? As expected, it's difficult to compete against an Emperor's Tao. However, how much Emperor's Tao power can your remnant consciousness and body unleash? Chu Kuangren waved his descendant self-sword and said indifferently. It's enough to kill you. The swordsman emperor said coldly. A terrifying emperor's aura erupted from his body, making Chu Kuangren's sword Tao feel suppressed. It was Chu Kuangren's first time being suppressed to such an extent. However, not only did he not panic, But he was also excited to see his opponent. He waved his descendant self-sword and unleashed his Dao to its fullest. During this process, his Dao that had just broken through to its peak showed signs of advancing further. He was using this emperor's Dao to hone his own Dao. "You're too arrogant to use my Dao to hone your skills." The swordsman emperor snorted and channeled his power to its peak. With a slash, Chu Kuangren was blasted away. "Ha! I've seen the tip of the iceberg of the emperor's Dao. It's time for this battle to end." Chu Kuangren chuckled. The swordsman emperor frowned at his words. "What do you mean? It's time to end this? Don't tell me you want to escape?" "No, I'm trying to kill you." Chu Kuangren chuckled and took a step forward. He channeled his majestic Taoist rhyme to its peak and unleashed his invincible technique. Suddenly, lines of Taoist patterns intertwined in the void, surging with a terrifying domineering aura. "This is the profound mystery." The swordsman emperor's pupils shrunk in shock. The profound mystery was a cultivation technique that allowed one's Dao to be unleashed to its peak. It was a cultivation technique that belonged to every cultivator. Even he, the swordsman emperor, could not understand the profound mystery. Now he was witnessing it from a junior sky pride. A junior sky pride like you can understand the profound mystery? How is this possible? Before I died, I spent countless years trying to understand the profound mystery. How can a junior sky pride like you do it? The emperor of the sword race lost his balance. If Chu Kuangren was an emperor now, he would not have reacted this way. However, Chu Kuangren was not. Chu Kuangren was just a junior sky pride. Moreover, Chu Kuangren could tell that Chu Kuangren was considered very young even among sky prides. He was definitely not more than 60 years old. But it was precisely this heaven's chosen that had comprehended the profound mysteries that he had spent tens of thousands of years studying. How could he accept this? He felt that his tens of thousands of years were like a joke. You can't even hold on to your Dao heart, and you call yourself an emperor? Chu Kuangren could tell that his opponent was about to explode, so he could not help but chuckle. He then took the opportunity to activate his technique of invincibility. With a slash of the sword, the power to overturn heaven and earth erupted. This force would not change according to Chu Kuangren's technique. Be it a sword slash or a fist strike, it would be the same. Bang! Under the bombardment of the heaven and earth reversal power, the sword race emperor was blasted away on the spot. The remnant consciousness also gradually disintegrated and turned back into a skeleton. "Young one, you've destroyed the ancestral grounds of the Sword Clan, so the emperors of the Sword Clan won't let you off easily." The emperor of the Sword Clan said coldly, "Once I become an emperor, tell them to come and find me." Chu Kuangren's figure flashed and grabbed the golden skeleton's head. The power of the 9 emperors of the 9 dragons erupted, instantly disintegrating the sword emperor's remnant consciousness. Then he tossed the skeleton into his yin and yang ring. Just when he had taken away the 3 major foundations of the Sword Clan's ancestral grounds, the entire ancestral grounds began to shake. Black cracks spread across the void and gradually covered the entire ancestral grounds. The enchanted boundary of the ancestral grounds began to crumble. "It's over. It's over." The swordsman emperors were instantly disheartened when they saw that. However, Chu Kuangren did not care at all. His figure flashed and turned into a stream of light, instantly disappearing from the swordsman emperor's sight. Meanwhile, in the outside world, the sword-shaped mountain that contained the swordsman's ancestral grounds began to crumble. Waves of horrifying spatial fluctuations spread out, destroying everything around it. The mountains and rivers were all turned into nothingness. The swordsman clan leader seemed to have expected this to happen. He had already led the swordsman to another place to take refuge. When the mountain began to collapse, a ray of sword light rushed out from within, and then disappeared into the void. The swordsman clan leader knew that it was Chu Kuangren. Chu Kuangren had already taken away the foundations of the swordsman's ancestral grounds. "It's all fate." The swordsman clan leader muttered helplessly. As the swordsman's ancestral grounds crumbled, the news of Chu Kuangren destroying another ancestral ground quickly spread throughout the Emperor's Road. In an instant, Chu Kuangren was once again the talk of the town. After the Holy Light's ancestral grounds, The swordsman's ancestral grounds won't be spared either. Is this Chu Kuangren going to destroy all the emperor's resting grounds before he stops? Isn't this too lawless? Ha, this Chu Kuangren really won't stop until he causes a ruckus. He's going to turn the emperor's road upside down. Now that he's in the emperor's road, who else can stop him? We can't let him go on like this. Otherwise, the emperor's road will become Chu Kuangren's world. I don't think there's anything wrong with this. He's obviously taking revenge. The swordsmen have been looking for trouble with Chu Kuangren time and time again, so why can't he take revenge? Yeah, I think so too. I can only say that the swordsmen brought this upon themselves. Throughout the emperor's road, there were people who criticized Chu Kuangren. Some said that he was ruthless, some said that he was someone who took revenge on others, and some just wanted to watch the drama unfold, guessing which force would be Chu Kuangren's next target. Among them, the ones who were the most afraid were the Wang family, by family, demonic tribe, and the runic lands. These orthodoxies that had once attacked Chu Kuangren were all on high alert. Not long after, another piece of news spread. That was Chu Kuangren had appeared in the Yin-Yang sect's territory, destroyed the divine sect's defensive formation, and seized the ancestral grounds foundations. When this news spread, many people's guesses were confirmed. Chu Kuangren was exacting his revenge. After the Yin-Yang sect, Chu Kuangren arrived at the Wang family. The moment he stepped into the Wang family's territory, a majestic five-colored light suddenly appeared in the sky above the Wang family's residence. The mistress of the Wang family flew over on her colorful peacock and tossed a white jade token in her hand. The white jade token glowed brightly, and a majestic figure formed in the void. This person emanated a terrifying emperor's poise. It was the emperor's clone of the Wang family's emperor, who had appeared to stop Chu Kuangren. This was also the Wang family's strongest technique. Sky Pride, leave the Wang family now, and I'll pretend nothing happened between you and the Wang family. The Wang family's emperor said arrogantly. You're just ting me. When Chu Kuangren heard that, he snorted coldly and threw a punch at his opponent from afar. His invincible technique erupted and streaks of Taoist patterns circled in the void, illuminating the scene of the sun and the moon flipping and the stars falling. The destructive power instantly blew the Wang family's emperor apart. Chapter 629. Chu Kuangren destroyed the Wang family's emperor's projection with a single punch. That terrifying power shocked every cultivator in the Wang family. The matriarch of the Wang family was sent flying by the terrifying impact, and her peacock mount flapped its wings and fled in panic. Are you going to hand over the Wang family's ancestral grounds, or do you want me to take it from you? Chu Kuangren stared coldly at the Wang family's mistress and said, Chu Kuangren, you've gone too far. I've heard you say that many times. My patience is limited. If you don't hand it over, the Wang family will not have a day of peace. The Wang family's mistress was so angry that her face turned green and her chest heaved. In the end, she could only give in. Even their strongest technique, the Wang family's emperor's will, was destroyed by Chu Kuangren with a single punch. What else could they do? Soon, the Wang family's ancestral grounds were destroyed, and the ancestral grounds foundations were taken away. Meanwhile, news of Chu Kuangren shattering the Wang emperor's will with a single punch had spread like wildfire. Everyone was shocked by the news, and they were all trying to guess just how powerful Chu Kuangren was. Then the Bai family, the demonic ox clan, the nine-headed snakelet tribe, Chu Kuangren went to all the ancient orthodoxies and took away their ancestral grounds foundations. Throughout the process, some people wanted to resist, but no one could. Chu Kuangren was unstoppable. About half a month later, Chu Kuangren had already taken away the ancestral grounds foundations of the ancient orthodoxies that had gone to the Seven Emotions sect to find trouble with him. These ancestral land foundations were a terrifying resource. If any of them were to be released, it would cause a bloodbath. Now this pile of treasures was placed in front of Chu Kuangren. Million Sword Essence, Emperor's Corpse, Heavenly Yellow Dragon Chi, Earth Vein Essence, Darkness Crystal, Yin-Yang Motherstone. Looks like this is enough for me to absorb and refine for a while. Chu Kuangren smiled in satisfaction as he looked at the pile of treasures. Soon, he found a place and set up layers of restrictions to ensure that even an emperor could not break through. Then he went into closed-door meditation. While Chu Kuangren was in closed-door meditation, the outside world was not peaceful. In the core area of the ancient barren forbidden area, a black soil that contained an ominous aura suddenly began to tremble. An incomparably strange power gradually spread out, and within the entire stretch of black soil, there were actually many arms reaching out. Many ancient existences crawled out of the ground and burst forth with horrifying auras, shaking half of the Emperor's road. "We have been revived." A middle-aged man in broken armor let out a long roar, and an extremely violent aura pierced through the clouds, shattering the clouds. It wasn't just him. Within the black soil, experts from the ancient era, or the primordial era, awakened one after another. Their might was impressive, shaking the Emperor's road. All the orthodoxies on the Emperor's road sensed it. For a time, all the great figures cast their gazes towards the core area of the desolate forbidden area, and their eyes were filled with bewilderment and uncertainty. The disturbance in the forbidden land, and this strange and ominous atmosphere. What is going on? Did something appear in the forbidden land? The core of the desolate forbidden land has been a place of absolute death for countless years. Only those who enter can come out. What happened today? Wait, what is that? Just as countless almighties were in shock, they suddenly saw a black light shoot up into the sky from the core area of the desolate forbidden area, and the strange and ominous atmosphere became even more solemn. The countless seals that wrapped around the core area of the desolate forbidden area shattered one after another. The black light dissipated, and what was reflected in the eyes of all the almighties was a giant bronze coffin that was carved with countless strange patterns. The giant coffin hovered in the air, and when the spiritual thoughts of all the almighties came into contact with it, they all screamed in pain. Their spiritual thoughts were instantly shattered by a strong and ominous aura. This is the emperor burying coffin of the ancient legends. One of the almighties was knowledgeable, and he immediately recognized the giant coffin that was unearthed from the depths of the desolate forbidden area, and he was extremely shocked. The emperor burying coffin. No one knew the origin of this item, and there were only a few ancient records of this item. Even for the emperors who had lived for countless years, the emperor burying coffin was something of the legends, and it was the first time they had seen it. Just as everyone was shocked by the appearance of the emperor burying coffin, they saw the emperor burying coffin move again. The emperor burying coffin trembled slightly, and a dark green light flashed across the surface of the coffin that was carved with countless strange patterns. Then, a very black chain extended out from the coffin, and swept in all directions. When the ancient experts who had just climbed out of the black soil of the forbidden area saw the black chain, their expressions changed drastically. They felt their scalps go numb, and they all wanted to escape. However, the surroundings were enveloped by an invisible force field that the emperor burying coffin emitted. Even the ancient experts could not escape. All of them were wrapped around their necks by the rings on the black chain, and they let out miserable screams. Hundreds of ancient experts screamed at the same time, and the strange and inexplicable scene caused the emperors in the Emperor's Road to feel horrified. After a while, the ancient experts' screams gradually stopped, and they crawled up from where they were, but their eyes were empty. Then the ancient experts pulled the chains behind them, and they dragged the emperor burying coffin out of the forbidden area. Oh no! One of the sovereigns seemed to have thought of something, and his expression became one of fear. Over 100 ancient experts dragged the emperor burying coffin to a city. Then all of them attacked at the same time. Incomparably violent energy exploded like a storm, sweeping across the entire place. Tens of millions of living beings in the city perished. After these living beings died, they turned into streams of blood-colored energy that surged into the burial emperor coffin, and were absorbed by it. The emperor burying coffin, which was originally dark blue in color, suddenly had a trace of blood color. The strange aura on it became even thicker. The burial emperor's coffin is the source of calamity. Once it appears, calamity will descend. The Emperor's Road is going to suffer a calamity. If you drag a coffin across the border, only death awaits. One of the emperors said in a terrified tone. These ancient experts had all explored the core of the forbidden grounds. But because of the influence of the burying emperor coffin, they all fell into a deep slumber in the black soil. But now, these ancient experts were awakened by the burying emperor coffin. They turned into coffin carriers, slaughtering for the coffin and gathering energy. The appearance of the ancient expert and the burying emperor coffin caused the emperor's road to tremble like never before. Countless people were terrified. Not only the emperor's road. Above the 9 heavens, the monarchs also sensed the appearance of the burying emperor coffin. All of them could not sit still anymore. Damn it, of all times to wake up, why did it have to choose now? This is going to be troublesome. Dragging a coffin across the border, only death awaits. The emperor's road is going to be finished. No, if the emperor's road is finished, no new monarch will appear in this era, and the heavenly law will still be incomplete. I've waited for so many years to get a chance to complete the heavenly law. How can I just watch it slip away like this? I don't have the patience to wait for another era. Then what should we do? The heavenly law is incomplete. As monarchs, we have no way to enter the emperor's road to stop this calamity. Let's wait and see. Chapter 630. Inside the emperor's road, a catastrophe was unfolding. The ancient experts who had once explored the core of the barren forbidden ground were awakened and turned into coffin carriers. They dragged the coffin and headed straight for Emperor Mountain. Everywhere they went, living beings were destroyed. In just 3 days, hundreds of millions of living beings had died. After the endless massacre, 1/5 of the coffin's surface had turned blood red. Everyone knew that the calamity would only end when the emperor burial coffin turned completely red. At that moment, some of the ancient orthodoxies who had planned to stop the coffin fell silent and did not move forward. What should we do now? Ignore them. Let the coffin continue to absorb energy. Once the coffin absorbs enough energy, it will naturally return to the forbidden ground. We only need to preserve our strength and fight for the throne in the future. But what about the others? Living beings are dying. Are we really going to sit back and do nothing? It's not like we killed them. It doesn't matter. After looking through countless ancient books, the emperors all knew that the emperor burying coffin had appeared mainly to collect the energy of living beings. Once they had collected enough energy, they would return to the depths of the forbidden ground. At that thought, most of the rulers made a decision almost instantly. Instead of stopping the coffin or going head-on against it, it was better to preserve their strength and avoid going head-on against the coffin. As for how many living beings would die because of their inaction, that was not within the scope of their consideration. After living for so many years, the rulers were already indifferent to life and death. Or rather, they were indifferent to the life and death of others apart from themselves. To them, as long as they did not endanger themselves or harm the interests of their clans, it did not matter to them how many others died. The inaction of the ancient orthodoxies was witnessed by countless people and cultivators. They all felt sorrowful. In the eyes of those at the top, they were no different from ants. At that moment, riots broke out all over the emperor's road. One should know that the ancient orthodoxies were able to develop to this day because of the help of some small and medium-sized orthodoxies and the people. Putting everything else aside, the number of spiritual sources that the ancient orthodoxies' subsidiary forces handed over every year was not a small number. Yet now, at the critical moment, they'd been abandoned and could be abandoned at will. How could they not be furious? The condemnation of the various ancient sects came wave after wave like tidewater, and it caused the reputation of the various sects to be in a terrible state. But even then, the various sects still turned a blind eye to it, and it was even to the extent that they dispatched forces to suppress some of the riots. What orthodoxy? It's all bullshit. Now that the calamity has arrived, all of them are acting like cowards. What a joke, what a joke. You used to strut around in front of us, but now you don't even dare to fart. God, didn't you say we were your people? Why are you turning a blind eye to the plight of your people? God, is this your so-called mercy, your so-called love for people as your own children? On the emperor's road, the cultivators and commoners of the various places complained, but there was nothing he could do. In front of the power of the ancient orthodoxies, they were too weak. In the face of the calamity, they were even more powerless. As the calamity continued, the ancient orthodoxies made a new move, but it wasn't to save the living beings. They were sending their heaven's prides deep into the barren, forbidden ground. They were going deep into the forbidden ground to search for fortunes. The restrictive spells deep inside the forbidden ground had disappeared, and the ancient powerhouses had awakened and turned into coffin carriers. There must be many fortunes hidden deep inside the forbidden ground, and these heaven's prides were heading for them. As countless living beings were in danger, the ancient orthodoxies weren't thinking about saving the commoners, or the forces that were affiliated with them. Instead, they were choosing to search for fortunes while the emperor-burying coffin was not around. This infuriated countless people. Screw your bullsh *T sword tribe. I and the others have contributed so much to the sword tribe, yet you're turning a blind eye to it. Instead of sending people to save people, you're going to search for fortunes? Screw you. O God of light, have you really abandoned us? F***CK. Inside a city, countless living beings were fleeing for their lives. The cultivators in the city received the news that the coffin dragging team was approaching. It wouldn't be long before they arrived. However, the emperor-burying coffin was faster than they had expected. Soon, everyone sensed that there was an extremely strange aura approaching them from afar. Over 100 ancient powerhouses had chains around their necks, and were dragging the emperor-burying coffin toward the city like dogs. Soon they arrived above the city. Without saying too much, over 100 ancient experts took action together, attacking the city. Cries of agony lingered in the air. The huge city instantly turned into a living hell. Countless living beings turned into blood-colored energy, and were absorbed by the emperor-burying coffin. Over 100 ancient powerhouses. Even the weakest one was a martial dominator, who had cultivated a few wisps of emperor chi. When they attacked at the same time, no one could stop them inside the martial monarch's path. In just a few breaths' time, the city had turned into a land of death. After absorbing another city's energy, the emperor-burying coffin's surface turned blood-colored again. It had now covered a third of the coffin. Not far away, there were emperors who witnessed this scene. That's terrifying. A martial dominator blurted out in fear. Yeah, the emperor-burying coffin is indeed an ominous object from the ancient era, or even the immemorial era. It can drive so many ancient powerhouses to sacrifice living beings for it. A martial dominator looked at the emperor-burying coffin in the distance with curiosity in his eyes. I wonder who is buried in the coffin. What's the purpose of it absorbing so many living beings' energy? Is it going to come back to life? No one knew why the emperor-burying coffin was sacrificing countless living beings. No one knew who was buried in it either. But since it was called the emperor-burying coffin, it was at least a martial monarch. This is related to the ancient era, or even the immemorial era. Only martial monarchs might know about it. It's not something we can know. The martial dominators shook their heads. There were some secrets that they were not qualified to know. Wait, did you guys notice that the emperor-burying coffin seems to be going in the wrong direction? It seems to be going to the Emperor Mountain. A martial dominator suddenly said with a frown. Hearing this, everyone's expression changed slightly. The Emperor Mountain was where the emperor-burying coffin was. Where is the emperor-burying coffin going? What's its purpose? I hope it won't affect the martial monarch realm. Pfft, it doesn't matter if it affects it or not. Isn't the martial monarch realm candidate already decided? A martial dominator from the sword race sneered. Everyone knew who he was talking about. They didn't know how to refute him. With that person around, none of their geniuses had any hope of becoming martial monarchs. Speaking of which, the emperor-burying coffin has caused such a huge commotion. Why hasn't that person appeared? What is he doing? Maybe he's found a place to hide. Although he's strong, I'm afraid he can't do anything against the emperor-burying coffin. Everyone went silent, and continued to watch the emperor-burying coffin. Chapter 631. The Emperor's Mountain. At the end of the Emperor's Road, where the Emperor's throne was located, The majestic emperor's mountain was shrouded in golden mist. As long as the emperor's throne was not revealed, the golden mist would not dissipate, and no one else could enter the emperor's mountain. Today, the golden mist seemed to have sensed something and began to rumble. Thousands of kilometers away from the emperor's mountain, hundreds of ancient cultivators were dragging a giant coffin that was half-stained with blood. That was the burying emperor's coffin. When the burying emperor's coffin arrived at the emperor's mountain, it caused the golden mist around the emperor's mountain to rumble, and a strange fluctuation spread out. King warriors on the emperor's way also noticed this. They all looked at Dishan, curious about the development of the situation. There are no living beings within 10,000 kilometers of the emperor's mountain. If the burying emperor's coffin wants to absorb the energy of living beings, why would it come here? Is this burying emperor's coffin trying to enter the emperor's mountain? Does the burying emperor's coffin have its own consciousness? This ominous object is truly strange and unfathomable. I wonder who is buried within it. While the emperors were discussing, the hundreds of ancient cultivators who were bound by the burying emperor's coffin seemed to have received some kind of order. They shouted in unison and channeled their spiritual power, and emperor's chi towards the emperor's mountain. Hundreds of terrifying energies collided with the golden mist and exploded. The impact was so great that the entire Mount Emperor shook a bit. Vaguely, the crowd could see the emperor's mountain through the dispersed mist. The majestic emperor's mountain stood tall on the ground, and its entire body was surrounded by countless Taoist patterns. At the peak of the mountain, there were a few platforms that looked like they were made out of gold and jade. On top of those platforms, there was a mysterious flow of energy. All the emperor's pupils constricted at the sight of this. That's the emperor's throne. There's more than one emperor's throne. Oh my God, they say that this era of great battles is an unprecedented change, and there's a chance for the world to turn from decline to prosperity. It seems like it's true. There's more than one emperor's throne in this era alone. It seems like our sky prides still have a chance to become emperors. No matter how strong Chu Kuangren is, can he claim all the emperor's throne? Haha, this is great news. This is a surprise. After seeing Dishan, the emperors were overjoyed. Then, they looked at the emperor burying coffin with worry in their eyes. The coffin of the burying emperor ordered the ancient experts to attack Mount D. What did that mean? Does it want to destroy Dishan? Fortunately, the Emperor Mountain had never been damaged since ancient times. Although the hundreds of ancient experts driven by the coffin were terrifying, it was still impossible for them to destroy the Emperor Mountain. After the sovereign's attacks dispersed the golden mist, they landed on the surface of the mountain, and were immediately disintegrated by the circulating Tao patterns. After the first round of attacks failed, these sovereigns channeled their spiritual energy and monarch chi like machines, raising their hands to launch a second round of attacks. But at this moment, a crack appeared in the void and a slender figure dressed in white robes walked out. Judging from the figure, it should be a woman, but what was incomparably surprising was that this woman had no head. Not only that, but this woman also exuded an extremely terrifying emperor's aura, causing the expressions of the martial emperors present to change. What is this? It can still move without a head. Who is this woman? What a strong emperor's aura. This woman must be an emperor-level figure, but why would she suddenly appear here? The appearance of the headless empress surprised the martial emperors. At this moment, the headless empress suddenly attacked. She slapped with her palm and an extremely thick emperor's aura was released. Although the headless empress could not unleash her full strength due to the restrictions of the emperor's path, and the fact that she did not have a head, her combat strength was still terrifying. With a slap, an emperor was sent flying. However, the headless empress's target was not these martial emperors. After opening a path, she flew towards the coffin of the burying emperor. She slapped with her palm and thick Taoist rhymes condensed. Seemingly solid Tao patterns surged out, and, with the support of emperor's aura, blasted towards the coffin of the burying emperor. With a loud bang, the coffin of the burying emperor trembled from the slap, and was sent flying hundreds of feet away. Even the lid of the coffin could not hold it any longer. A crack opened, revealing an extremely thick sea of gray clouds inside. Streaks of gray gas emerged from the sea of clouds and landed on the ground. The ground could not withstand the weight of the seemingly light wisp of fog. It exploded and caved in, forming a huge pit. That's chaotic energy. The martial emperors took a deep breath and their eyes were burning with passion. Chaotic energy was a treasure that only existed before the world was created. It could evolve into any type of energy. Not only that, the chaotic energy could be used to forge weapons, strengthen one's body, or even cultivate. It had endless uses. Just a wisp of chaotic energy was enough to make countless cultivators go crazy for it. Even martial emperors would be tempted. But what did they just see? The chaotic energy in the coffin of the burying emperor had turned into an endless sea of chaotic clouds. How much chaotic energy was that? Great opportunity. This is definitely a great opportunity. If we can get our hands on this chaotic energy, even if it's just a ball, it would be enough to benefit us greatly. We are confident that we can become emperors in the next era. That's right. There's such a treasure hidden in the coffin of the burying emperor. My God, this is unimaginable. As the crowd was still in shock, the coffin of the burying emperor closed. The sea of chaotic clouds disappeared in front of the crowd. Seeing this, the headless empress attacked again in an attempt to break the coffin of the burying emperor. However, the material of the coffin of the burying emperor was special, and there were Dao runes on it. Even though the headless empress was powerful, she could not open it again. Not only that, the surrounding ancient experts attacked the headless empress fiercely under the command of the coffin of the burying emperor. Among them, there were a few who were not weaker than the headless empress. Under the continuous attacks of the ancient experts, the headless empress had no choice but to retreat. In the end, she tore open a crack in the space and left. The martial emperors looked at each other in confusion. The headless empress suddenly appeared and left after fighting for no reason. What's the meaning of this? I don't know either. Maybe the headless empress is after the chaotic energy in the coffin of the burying emperor. What should we do now? One of the martial emperors asked. The crowd rolled their eyes when they saw him. What else can we do? Let's wait and see. Once the coffin of the burying emperor has collected enough energy, we can go back by ourselves. Are you going to fight it head-on like the headless empress? One of the martial emperors curled his lips and said, indeed, the chaotic energy in the coffin of the burying emperor was a great opportunity. However, the problem was that they had to find a way to get it. Did they really think that the hundreds of ancient experts controlled by the coffin of the burying emperor were just decorations? Even the headless empress could not do anything about it, let alone the rest of them. Then, the coffin of the burying emperor commanded the ancient experts to continue attacking the mountain. However, the mountain was difficult to destroy. The hundreds of ancient experts attacked for a day and a night, but not even a single stone was destroyed. Feeling helpless, the ancient experts could only drag the coffin of the burying emperor and leave. They headed to other places to continue collecting energy for the coffin of the burying emperor. After the coffin of the burying emperor left, more than 10 martial emperors rushed forward to fight for the few streams of chaotic energy that came out from the coffin. Damn it, it's mine. Don't fight for it. It belongs to whoever gets it first. Just as more than 10 martial emperors were fighting for a few streams of chaotic energy, the scene of people dragging the coffin of the burying emperor continued. Chapter 632. Just when the outside world was in chaos. Chu Kuangren was currently refining the ancestors' grounds foundation stones that he had obtained from the various ancestors' lands. These resources were of great help to him. In fact, they were even helping him break through the limits of an emperor. There were 9 surges of emperor's qi that could be cultivated below the emperor realm. The Daos below the emperor realm were considered the ultimate Daos. However, Chu Kuangren was breaking through this ancient limit with the help of a large number of ancestors' grounds foundation stones. On the 3rd day of his closed-door meditation, Chu Kuangren successfully condensed the 10th surge of emperor's qi after refining 3 ancestors' grounds foundation stones. Following that, the 11th, 12th, 13th, and 14th surges of Emperor's Qi were added one after another. After half a month of closed-door meditation, Chu Kuangren had refined all the ancestors' ground's foundation stones that he could refine. At this moment, the Emperor's Qi in his body had reached an astonishing 24 surges, completely breaking through the limit of 9 surges of Emperor's Qi. Not only that, but under the nourishment of the Emperor's Qi, his physical body and soul energy had also greatly improved. Boom, boom, boom. Suddenly, a violent tremor erupted in a mountain range. Then, a figure broke out of the mountain and shot into the sky. An endless domineering aura spread out from that person, shocking all the cultivators within a radius of hundreds of thousands of kilometers. Everyone looked over and saw a white-robed, black-haired figure standing in the air with a gorgeous longsword hanging from his waist. He looked like a celestial being. It's him, Chu Kuangren. Has he been in closed-door meditation all this while? What a terrifying aura. What realm is he at now? This is too scary. Others who have cultivated for thousands of years can't improve as much as him after a few days of closed-door meditation. Is he still human? This aura, don't tell me he's an emperor. Countless cultivators looked at Chu Kuangren, who was standing in the air, and gulped. The domineering aura that Chu Kuangren exuded was beyond their understanding. Even the forbidden emperors could not compare to him. At this time, Chu Kuangren was standing in the air, and his spiritual thought, which had greatly increased, spread out like a tidal wave. Soon, half of the emperor's path was covered by his spiritual thought. He had the telekinesis talent. All of these spiritual thoughts possessed his 5 senses, so he could hear what others were saying and even touch them. Therefore, he was aware of everything that had happened during this period of time, including the appearance of the emperor burying coffin. The emperor burying coffin? This thing is interesting. Chu Kuangren muttered. His spiritual sense surged as he searched for the existence of this item. Very quickly, he sensed the exact location of the burying emperor's coffin. However, the location of the coffin caused his eyes to turn cold instantly. Holy sh*T, you've crossed the line. The ancient cultivator dragged the burying emperor coffin to a mountain range. Everywhere he went, countless living beings turned into blood-colored energy and were absorbed. In the depths of the mountain range were countless restrictions. That was where Nangong Huang and the others were cultivating in seclusion. However, the coffin haulers did not care about that. They only knew how to mechanically repeat their killing actions, destroying all living beings they encountered to provide energy for the burying emperor coffin behind them. Boom! An emperor punched out. The violent power instantly killed all the beasts in the mountain range. Then, countless crimson energy surged towards the burial emperor coffin. Tens of thousands of miles away from the burying emperor coffin, a group of emperors gathered. They looked at the burial emperor coffin that was already half-stained with blood with respect and fear in their eyes. This emperor burying coffin is almost done collecting the energy of the living beings. Look at the blood color, it's about to dye the entire coffin red. One of the emperors said. Hearing this, the rest of the people nodded. Yes, it's almost done. I think we just need to kill another billion. By then, we won't have to hide anymore. After this incident with the burial emperor coffin, the forces that are affiliated with us are very resentful. We'll need to appease them for a while. Their deaths are valuable. They provided the energy for the burial emperor coffin and protected us. Even if these mortals cultivate for a few more lifetimes, they would never be able to accumulate such merit. That makes sense. They should feel honored. The emperors whispered to each other, and their expressions gradually became relaxed. As long as the burial emperor coffin finished collecting energy and left, they would still be the ancient orthodoxy that dominated the world. They would not be a threat anymore. Besides, their sky prides had also obtained many opportunities of fortune in the depths of the barren forbidden area. They believed that it would be of great help in the fight for the throne. The appearance of the burial emperor coffin was a disaster. However, to them, it was also an opportunity of fortune. At that thought, they could not help but feel that the burial emperor coffin was more pleasing to the eye. As for the billions of lives that had died because of the burial emperor coffin, they did not care at all. The burial emperor coffin was still wreaking havoc. Just as it was getting closer to the depths of the mountain range, a strange spatial fluctuation suddenly came from the void. A ripple appeared in the void, and a black-haired white-robed figure slowly walked out from the void, staring coldly at the burial emperor coffin. Upon seeing this person, the ancient powerhouses that had turned into coffin haulers did not show any change in expression. Instead, the emperors in the distance were shocked. It's him. Why is Chu Kuangren here all of a sudden? What is he trying to do? Is he trying to stop the burial emperor coffin? Are you kidding me? Hundreds of ancient powerhouses are dragging the coffin. How can he possibly resist such a force? What he's doing is no different from digging his own grave. Besides, why is he doing this? Don't tell me it's because of those ordinary people? The emperors looked at each other. They did not know why Chu Kuangren would suddenly attack, but they did not think that he could successfully stop the burial emperor coffin either. They watched the scene with great interest. One of the ancient powerhouses looked at Chu Kuangren and unleashed a punch. His emperor's chi merged with his spiritual power to form a giant fist seal, and it smashed towards Chu Kuangren with an earth-shattering force. A puppet. Chu Kuangren casually raised his hand and unleashed a punch. With a loud explosion, the giant fist seal shattered on the spot, but Chu Kuangren's fist chi continued to move forward and hit that ancient powerhouse. Without any suspense, that ancient powerhouse was blasted into a mist of blood by Chu Kuangren's punch. That scene shocked the emperors who were watching the battle from afar. They gasped in disbelief. Why does it seem like his strength has increased again? How long has it been? It's only been 10 days since he wreaked havoc in the ancestors' lands. How did his strength increase again? Is it the same every day? D***minute. Did this guy refine all of the ancestors' land's foundation stones? That's impossible. How can he refine so many of them without at least 100 years of time? The emperors gulped as their minds buzzed. Chu Kuangren's strength had improved too quickly. Every time he appeared, he would improve tremendously. No matter how talented a Sky Pride was, it was still unbelievable for their strength to improve so quickly. I'd like to see what's inside this. Chu Kuangren looked at the burial emperor coffin curiously. Chapter 633. In order to protect Nangong Huang, Chu Kuangren appeared at the place where Lan Yu and the others had gone into closed-door meditation, and killed an ancient cultivator with a single punch. The strength that Chu Kuangren displayed shocked the sovereigns who were watching from afar. Then, Chu Kuangren raised his hand towards the emperor burying coffin, and unleashed another punch, activating his own invincible technique. The Taoist rhymes condensed into solid Taoist patterns that swept out mightily, illuminating the sun and moon reversal and the falling of the stars. Several ancient cultivators tried to block the attack, but it was no match for Chu Kuangren, whose strength had increased tremendously. A few clouds of blood mist exploded, and the heaven and earth reversal energy smashed onto the emperor burying coffin, causing a loud explosion. The emperor burying coffin was sent flying, and the coffin lid could no longer contain the surging chaotic chi inside. Several surges of chaotic chi escaped. Chu Kuangren's eyes lit up when he saw that, and he immediately grabbed the surging chaotic chi. Oh, there's so much chaotic chi in here. Chu Kuangren's eyes lit up when he caught the chaotic chi in his hand. That much chaotic chi was a great opportunity of fortune. In Chu Kuangren's eyes, this ominous item was a priceless treasure. Today, I'm going to beat you up. Chu Kuangren smirked. There was no way he was going to miss out on so much chaotic chi. He raised his hand and unleashed his invincible technique again. The burial emperor coffin trembled a little. Then many chains shot out and bound the coffin lid tightly. There were even Tao patterns flowing on the surface of the coffin. It was very mysterious. This time, the invincible technique only caused the coffin lid to shake a little, and no chaotic chi escaped. At this point, Chu Kuangren suddenly had a feeling that the burying emperor's coffin was not collecting life energy to resurrect anyone. Instead, it was to suppress something within the coffin. Was it that chaotic chi, or was it something else? However, Chu Kuangren did not think too much about it. All he wanted to do now was to get his hands on that chaotic chi. I'd like to see how long you can suppress this coffin lid for. Chu Kuangren attacked again. The hundreds of ancient cultivators also attacked at the same time, and terrifying energy instantly collided with Chu Kuangren. The surrounding heaven and earth seemed to be on the verge of exploding. Chu Kuangren frowned slightly. This place is too close to where Nangong Huang and the others are cultivating in seclusion. I'm afraid it will affect them. I have to stay further away. Thinking of this, he condensed a huge mystical talisman. In an instant, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth gathered, transforming into rainbow-colored dragon chi that danced in the air. It was the divine transformation of the 9 dragons. As Chu Kuangren's strength continued to increase, so did the power of this rune. He was not afraid that it would become obsolete in a short period of time. At least for now, it was still a rather useful trump card. 9 streams of colorful dragon chi danced in the air and entered Chu Kuangren's body, causing his aura to skyrocket once again. 24 streams of Emperor's Qi and 9 streams of Dragon Qi unleashed a powerful shockwave that almost crushed the entire realm. All the Emperors watching from afar were stunned. What kind of power was this? Was this the strength someone below the Emperor realm could possess? They felt that if more than 10 Emperors were to gang up on Chu Kuangren, they would not be able to withstand more than 3 punches and kicks from him. Chu Kuangren /S combat strength was already close to that of an Emperor. The ancient cultivators had also sensed Chu Kuangren /S terrifying power. One by one, they channeled their spiritual energy and Emperor /S chi towards Chu Kuangren and unleashed all kinds of powerful techniques. Among them, there were quite a few who were not weaker than peerless emperors like the Sword Emperor of Wind and Cloud, and there were even many who were stronger than him. Those who could venture deep into the barren forbidden area were not ordinary people. Unfortunately, their opponent was Chu Kuangren. Heaven /S vortex. The spiritual energy and Emperor /S chi within Chu Kuangren /S body surged and surged out, turning into a huge vortex that was formed by countless intertwining Taoist patterns. Surges of energy entered the vortex, but in the end, they were all disintegrated by the Heaven /S vortex and even rebounded. The terrifying energy unleashed by the ancient experts turned into a violent storm that swept back and sent them flying. The Emperor burying coffin was also thrown thousands of miles away. Meanwhile, Chu Kuangren /S attack was still ongoing. The Taoist physique within his body erupted and converged in the void, forming a huge rainbow-colored avatar. It was the myriad Taoist avatar. At this time, within the myriad Taoist avatar, there was an additional surge of plague evil physique /S power. It was so dense that it sent chills down everyone /S spine. What? Plague evil physique? What /S going on with that avatar? Why does it suddenly have another plague evil physique /S power? Plague evil physique, Poison Emperor. Don T tell me he /S taken over the Poison Emperor /S power? How did he do it? The group of emperors looked at Chu Kuangren and felt goosebumps all over their bodies. Chu Kuangren /S abilities were too unfathomable. Moreover, he had an endless stream of strange techniques. Taking over someone else /S Taoist physique for his own use. It was not unheard of, but it was said that it could only be achieved by taking over someone else /S body. However, Chu Kuangren was obviously not one of them. No one knew how he had done it. Chu Kuangren could not care less about how shocked the sovereigns were. He unleashed a punch, and the avatar behind him did the same. The fist force traveled 1,000 miles and landed on the burying emperor's coffin, sending it flying once again. The ancient cultivators were chained to the emperor burying coffin, so when the emperor burying coffin was sent flying, they were sent flying as well. Chu Kuangren took a step forward and used the spatial conveyor technique to arrive before the emperor burying coffin again. The avatar behind him unleashed another punch, and another few ancient cultivators were blasted apart by that terrifying energy. Chu Kuangren was unstoppable. He looked like he would not stop until he broke the emperor burying coffin, and not many ancient cultivators could stop him. The emperor burying coffin trembled slightly. Then the ancient cultivators stopped fighting and dragged the emperor burying coffin away. It looked like they were trying to escape. Trying to escape? No way. Chu Kuangren smiled coldly and chased after them. The emperors who were watching the battle were dumbfounded. The emperor burying coffin, which had rendered the entire emperor/s path helpless and forced all ancient orthodoxies to retreat, was forced to escape by Chu Kuangren. How could an ancient ominous item be so cheap? ISN/T this Chu Kuangren a little too aggressive? One of the emperors gulped and said. At this time, many places on the emperor/s path had been turned into a wasteland because of the emperor burying coffin/s rampage. Countless living beings were afraid that the emperor burying coffin would suddenly pass by and devour them. In one of the cities, some of the cultivators there suddenly sensed a terrifying wave of energy rapidly approaching them. When they turned to look, they were all given a huge fright. It the emperor burying coffin. Quick, run for your lives. The emperor burying coffin passed through the emperor/s path. The emperor burying coffin was now the most terrifying existence on the emperor/s path. Everyone panicked when they sensed the emperor burying coffin/s arrival. They did not even have the time to pack their things and ran for their lives. However, someone suddenly sensed that something was wrong. The ancient cultivators who were dragging the coffin did not seem to care about them at all, as they dragged the emperor burying coffin away from them. It was as if they were hiding from something. Many cultivators were speechless when they thought of that. Could the emperor burying coffin be afraid of anything? That was impossible. However, they soon saw a white-robed figure with a colorful avatar behind him chasing after the emperor burying coffin. He threw out a punch that contained a terrifying fist energy that instantly killed an ancient cultivator, who tried to stop him. That person was chasing after the emperor burying coffin. At that moment, everyone felt like they saw a god descending to save the world. Chapter 634. Heavenly God, he's an heavenly God. One of the cultivators could not help but exclaim when he saw Chu Kuangren chasing after the burying emperor's coffin. Another cultivator could not help but smack his head and said, Heavenly God, my *s, that's Chu Kuangren. Although that cultivator said that, he was also very shocked. He had seen Chu Kuangren before and knew that he was very powerful, but he did not expect him to be this strong. The burying emperor's coffin that was guarded by hundreds of ancient cultivators was being chased by Chu Kuangren alone. This kind of strength was too strong, wasn't it? Heavenly God. This is a real heavenly God. At that moment, many people in the city who saw Chu Kuangren chasing after the burying emperor's coffin could not help but kneel on the ground and worship him. They were not cultivators, so they had only heard of some of the famous figures in the cultivation world. However, they knew about the burying emperor's coffin. Hundreds of millions of living beings were killed by that coffin. To them, the only person who could stop this disaster was an heavenly God. The heavenly God has descended to save the world. Greetings, heavenly God. May the heavenly God subdue the demon in that coffin. Countless people kneeled on the ground and looked at Chu Kuangren's retreating figure with reverence on their faces. Even some of the weaker cultivators were shaken and wanted to kneel on the ground to worship Chu Kuangren. The ancient orthodoxies were helpless. The burying emperor's coffin that the Divine Radiance cult and Dark God cult avoided was being chased by Chu Kuangren. It was not wrong for someone like him to be called an heavenly God, right? Chu Kuangren chased after the burying emperor's coffin and destroyed all the ancient cultivators who tried to stop him with a single punch. His unparalleled combat strength and divine aura had forcefully created a ray of light in the emperor's road that was shrouded in darkness and despair. Wherever he went, everyone who witnessed this scene, be it cultivators or ordinary people, were extremely shocked and revered him like a god. In other words, once the burying emperor's coffin was settled, it would be much easier for Chu Kuangren to build a religion in the emperor's road. He could even build a religion that was no weaker than the two great religions if he put in some effort. Inside the barren forbidden area, the geniuses of the ancient orthodoxies were taking advantage of the absence of the emperor burying coffin to venture deep into the core to search for various opportunities. No one had been able to enter the core area of the desolate forbidden land for many years. There were indeed many opportunities here. Some forbidden prodigies also reaped great rewards. Boom. All of a sudden, a terrifying wave of monarch chi erupted from the peak of a mountain. Qin Tianqian walked out from a cave, his eyes flickered as he exclaimed, 3 streams of monarch chi. I've already cultivated 3 streams of monarch chi. Let's work harder. We can definitely catch up to Chu Kuangren. Chu Kuangren was a reincarnated emperor, so his Taoist core was extremely resilient. The others had been defeated by Chu Kuangren to the point that they had lost all will to fight back, and were filled with despair. However, Qin Tianqian didn't. He wanted to catch up. This time, the core area of the desolate forbidden land was open to the public. This was his only chance to catch up to them. The core area of the desolate forbidden land has been explored by countless people over the years. However, because of the existence of the burying emperor coffin, they either died or went into hibernation in the black soil. Even the emperors are no exception. However, due to the incomplete heavenly Tao, the burying emperor coffin can't control the emperors to unleash their full combat strength. Otherwise, if the emperors were to pull the coffin, that would be the real terrifying burying emperor coffin. Qin Tianqian murmured. As a reincarnated emperor, he knew many secrets that even the emperors did not know about. He also knew how terrifying the burying emperor coffin was. If the burying emperor coffin could unleash its full power, even the emperors would bleed. However, even if it's an incomplete burying emperor coffin, no one can stop it in the emperor's path. Who knows how many people will die here? Qin Tianqian shook his head. He did not care. He had the same mindset as the emperors. No matter how many civilians died, it would not affect him. He only had one goal now, and that was to surpass Chu Kuangren and become an emperor again. Let's go to the black soil to look for opportunities. Qin Tianqian looked at the black soil in the distance. That was one of the most dangerous places in the core area of the desolate forbidden land. It was also the place where the burying emperor coffin was buried. However, now that the burying emperor coffin was gone, the danger level in the black soil was greatly reduced. Perhaps he could find some great opportunities there. Aside from Qin Tianqian, many other sky prides were also heading towards the black soil. Everyone wanted to find some great opportunities there while the burying emperor coffin was not around, so that they could get ahead of the other sky prides. By Hongyu Wang Quan 9 Flames, Niu Dali Sha Wuxia, and the other forbidden sky prides were all there. Besides them, there were also many other top-notch sky prides. Everyone looked at the black soil with a hint of fear in their eyes. Even though the burying emperor coffin was not around, the black soil still exuded a strange and ominous atmosphere. How can I find great opportunities if I'm afraid to move forward? Besides, now that the burying emperor coffin is gone, this is my best chance. Wang Quan gritted his teeth, and was about to enter the vast and boundless black soil. Not only him, but Bai Hongyu Niu Dali Yin Luozi, and the other forbidden sky prides also had a determined look in their eyes. That's right. If I don't even dare to enter the black soil, how can I even think about fighting for the throne? I might as well find a place to farm instead. I've heard that Emperor Shan has more than one throne. Even if I can't beat Chu Kuangren, I can still fight for the other throne. Can't beat Chu Kuangren? I don't believe that I can't beat him forever. Sha Wuxia snorted coldly. Just when everyone was about to step into the black soil, the entire black soil suddenly started to tremble. Everyone's expression changed and they were all shocked. What's going on? What's going on with this sudden tremor? Guys, look. Suddenly, one of the sky prides exclaimed. In the middle of the black soil, a huge crack suddenly appeared, and a thick, strange, and ominous aura erupted. In the distant sky, there was also a similar ominous aura that was rushing towards them. It was as if it was resonating with the crack. Everyone sensed something and looked towards the sky. All they saw was a black ray of light flying towards them. It was the burying emperor coffin. At that moment, all the sky prides, including Qin Tianqian, were terrified. The burying emperor coffin. How can this be? How can the burying emperor coffin return so quickly? The blood on the coffin has yet to completely cover the coffin, so it shouldn't have absorbed enough energy. Why is it back so suddenly? Oh my God, what's going on? Run! Some of the sky prides could not help but flee in panic. The burying emperor coffin was too terrifying. Even if all of them were multiplied by 10, they still would not be able to fight it. Something's not right. Where are the coffin-dragging men? Qin Tianqian suddenly realized something. Originally, the burying emperor coffin was carried by hundreds of ancient cultivators, but now, there were only a few of them left. Where did the rest of the coffin-dragging men go? Just when everyone was puzzled, they heard a burst of laughter coming from the sky. You want to go back to the ground? Have you asked for my permission? Chapter 635. Did you ask for my permission to go back to the ground? A burst of laughter came from the sky. With a burst of colorful light, Chu Kuangren, who had activated his 10,000 Taoist avatar, suddenly appeared in front of everyone. The incomparably majestic Dharma floated in midair, suppressing all the heaven's favorites. All the heaven's favorites were in awe. That kind of power was something that they could never hope to achieve in their entire lives. Chu Kuangren. I can't believe he's here. Also, what is he doing? What does he mean? Is he chasing after the emperor burying coffin? No, that's impossible. The emperor burying coffin is an ancient ominous item that all ancient orthodoxies would avoid. Why would anyone in this world chase after it? Everyone could not believe what they were seeing. What happened next was even more shocking. When Chu Kuangren saw that the emperor burying coffin was about to return to the ground, he sped up and took a step forward. The avatar behind him grabbed the chains that extended from the emperor burying coffin and pulled it back. Seeing that, the remaining few ancient cultivators immediately rushed towards Chu Kuangren and unleashed an extremely powerful energy wave. Their spiritual power and emperor's qi gushed towards Chu Kuangren. I've killed so many of them, but there are still a few left. Chu Kuangren curled his lips and unleashed a punch. His invincible technique was unleashed, causing the sun and moon to flip and the stars to fall to the ground. It was as if the power to destroy the world had blasted the few ancient cultivators apart. The sky prides at the scene were dumbfounded by what they saw. What kind of terrifying combat strength was that? What kind of horrifying monster was that? Even Qin Tianqian, the reincarnated emperor, was dumbfounded. How could something like chasing after the emperor burying coffin happen? Isn't this a little too far-fetched? Even if the heavenly Tao was incomplete and the emperor's road was restricted, the emperor burying coffin could not unleash its full power. However, it was still not something that an emperor could withstand. Chu Kuangren could chase after the emperor burying coffin all by himself, and even kill hundreds of coffin carriers. With such power, could it be that this guy had become an emperor? Qin Tianqian could not help but feel a little hopeless. It was almost certain that Chu Kuangren would become an emperor. Once such a person became an emperor, he would definitely be an extremely powerful emperor. Even if he lived a second life, he would not be able to catch up to him. The other sky prides who still had a glimmer of hope to catch up to Chu Kuangren were also in despair. This monster! Sha Wuxia gritted his teeth and said. There was a feeling of helplessness in his heart. The sky pride stared at Chu Kuangren in shock, but Chu Kuangren did not have the time to care about them. At this moment, he was fully focused on the burying emperor's coffin. He had to get his hands on the chaotic aura in the coffin. That kind of opportunity was more than 10 times more precious than all the treasures he had obtained after coming to the emperor's road. Come here. Chu Kuangren snorted coldly and forcefully dragged the emperor burying coffin over to him. The myriad Taoist avatar grabbed the coffin with both its hands. With one hand holding onto the coffin, it tried to open the coffin lid with the other. However, the burying emperor's coffin was an ancient, ominous item that was made of a special material. No matter what Chu Kuangren did, he could not open it. He frowned as he suddenly felt troubled. If I can't open it, then this is going to be difficult. Do I really have to throw it into the ground? Chu Kuangren murmured. His gaze swept across the strange patterns on the burying emperor's coffin. Suddenly, a thought flashed across his mind. Although the burying emperor's coffin was a strange and ominous item, it still looked like a treasure. I wonder if I can refine it? It was a very bold idea. After all, even emperors were extremely wary of ancient, ominous items. Hence, no one would dare to casually try to refine it. I'll give it a try. With that thought in mind, Chu Kuangren began to refine it. However, when he tried to use his spiritual power and emperor's qi to refine it, the strange qi within the burying emperor's coffin suddenly exploded and completely shattered his spiritual power and emperor's qi. It did not give him a chance to refine it at all. Not only that, but the strange qi also seized the opportunity to invade his body and destroy his bodily functions. At this time, if it were anyone else, even a top-notch emperor, their body would have exploded from this strange qi. Although Chu Kuangren's physical body was extremely strong, his bones and meridians were still damaged by this strange qi. However, other than his powerful physical body, Chu Kuangren also had the immortal body, which was one of his biggest trump cards. The moment his body was injured, the immortal body was instantly activated. His meridians, flesh, and blood were quickly reconstructed. Chu Kuangren's hand was still pressed on the burying emperor's coffin's surface. His spiritual power and emperor's qi continued to surge out, intending to refine it. Meanwhile, the strange qi within the burying emperor's coffin was also constantly destroying Chu Kuangren's body, but it was quickly reconstructed. I'll be fine even if you blast me into pieces. Chu Kuangren sneered. He was now at the 4th level of the immortal body, blood rebirth. Unless he was shattered into particles smaller than ashes, as long as there was a drop of blood left, he could be reborn indefinitely. However, he could not see that the burying emperor's coffin had such an ability. This was also the reason why he dared to take the risk to refine the burying emperor's coffin. Just like that, one wanted to refine the other, while the other wanted to destroy the other. Both parties were in a stalemate. The surrounding sky prides could not help but gulp when they saw Chu Kuangren's hand on the burying emperor's coffin. Qin Tianqian was especially dumbfounded. Since ancient times, no one had dared to touch the burying emperor's coffin. Yet Chu Kuangren did it. Not only that, but he also wanted to refine this ominous item. This lunatic, does he not want to live anymore? Qin Tianqian could not believe what he was seeing. Meanwhile, none of the sky prides dared to explore the black soil anymore. Now that the burying emperor's coffin was back, and with Chu Kuangren, who knew what would happen next? It was too dangerous to enter the black soil now. The burying emperor's coffin and Chu Kuangren. These are the two most dangerous existences in the emperor's path, right? One of the sky prides suddenly said, shocking everyone. Indeed, these two are the most dangerous existences. What do you guys think will happen if Chu Kuangren refines the burying emperor's coffin? One of the sky prides suddenly said. At that moment, no one could answer him. If the two most dangerous existences joined forces, it would not be as simple as 1 + 1. It's impossible. Qin Tianqian said with certainty, since ancient times, no one has been able to refine the burying emperor's coffin, not even emperors. Chu Kuangren is indeed a genius, but even he can't refine this burying emperor's coffin. He seemed to have thought of Chu Kuangren's unbelievable feats, so he added, perhaps it'll be possible after he becomes an emperor. Chu Kuangren was too good at breaking people's assumptions, so even Qin Tianqian dared not say anything definite. In his opinion, Chu Kuangren might be able to do things that emperors could not after he became an emperor. However, since he was not an emperor yet, it was impossible for him to refine the burying emperor's coffin. Chapter 636. Above the black soil, Chu Kuangren and the emperor burying coffin were locked in a stalemate. One of them wanted to refine the other, while the other wanted to destroy the other. When the two forces collided in the void, it formed a terrifying force field that distorted the surrounding void. If anyone were to get within a certain range of these two forces, they would definitely be pulverized by that terrifying force field. Gradually, Chu Kuangren seemed to have gained the upper hand. Although the emperor burying coffin's power could destroy his body, his immortal body could quickly recover. Hence, even after half a day he was still unharmed. On the other hand, the emperor burying coffin's resistance was getting weaker and weaker. "Oh, have you reached your limit?" Chu Kuangren chuckled. He then took out the chaotic qi that he obtained from the emperor burying coffin and absorbed it into his body. His universal cauldron physique quickly converted it into spiritual power to replenish his strength. Then he increased the speed of refining the emperor burying coffin. At that moment, the emperor burying coffin's lid suddenly creaked open. A ray of black light shone and enveloped Chu Kuangren. Then, a terrifying suction force erupted and sucked Chu Kuangren into the coffin. The sudden change made everyone dumbfounded. What's going on? Everyone looked at each other. Even Qin Tianchen was dumbfounded. Did he enter the emperor burying coffin? Since ancient times, even countless emperors didn't know what was hidden in the emperor's coffin. Not many emperors dared to touch such an ominous item, let alone enter it to find out what was inside. Yet now, Chu Kuangren had entered the emperor burying coffin in front of everyone. He was the first person to enter the emperor burying coffin since ancient times. At least, that was what Qin Tianchen knew. What is hidden inside this emperor burying coffin? Perhaps this ancient riddle is about to be solved. Qin Tianchen was suddenly looking forward to it. However, at that moment, Sha Unpardonable, who was standing beside him, sneered. Such an ominous object would kill anyone who touches it, let alone entering it directly. In my opinion, Chu Kuangren is dead for sure. Not many people objected to that. Indeed, the burying emperor's coffin was an ominous item. Anyone who had anything to do with it would not end well. However, Chu Kuangren had entered the coffin directly. Although no one had ever done it before, it did not mean that it was a good thing. Perhaps there was an even more fatal killing intent hidden within the coffin. Could it be that Chu Kuangren has died just like that? Bai Hongyu said in bewilderment. That might not be the case. Maybe he has some other fortuitous encounter inside. Wang Quan shook his head and guessed. Stop joking around. What kind of opportunity of fortune could such an ominous object bring? This Chu Kuangren must be dead. Sha Unpardonable snorted coldly. That's right. That's an ominous item that even the ancient emperors were afraid of. There's no way Chu Kuangren will survive this. Jiao Yan of the Jiao-ing tribe sneered. At this moment, the emperor burying coffin suddenly shook. This strange movement caused everyone's expressions to change. Sha Wuxia and Ningyan were even more bewildered. It couldn't be, could it? He really didn't die. However, after the emperor burying coffin trembled for a moment, it drilled into the crack in the black soil and disappeared. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the crack in the black soil closed and everything returned to normal. Haha, this time he's definitely dead. Sha Wuxia laughed out loud. Beside him, Jiao Yan also revealed a happy smile. The other forbidden sky prides such as Zi Wuji, Bai Hongyu, and the others were more or less happy as well. They let out a long sigh of relief as if a huge boulder that had been pressing on their chests had been lifted. It's a shame that the brightest sky pride has fallen. Qin Tianchen shook his head and said. Then he held his head high and faced the sun. The next era belongs to me, Qin Tianchen. The faces of the other forbidden prodigies were also glowing. Their thoughts were clear, and their originally lifeless bodies were once again filled with vitality. The emperor burying coffin has returned to the black soil. This place is no longer suitable for exploration, so I plan to go to other places. Indeed, the black soil is not suitable for exploration. Besides, let's not disturb Chu Kuangren's rest here. Let's go. Using the black soil as a grave and the emperor burying coffin as a coffin. This is a privilege that not even the great emperors can enjoy. Chu Kuangren, you're so lucky. One by one, the sky prides left the black soil with smiles on their faces. Soon, the vast black soil was empty. Not long after, the news of Chu Kuangren's death in the emperor burying coffin spread like wildfire across the entire emperor's road. Many people were in disbelief. Chu Kuangren was dead? The brightest sky pride in the emperor's road was dead. How was this possible? More than 10 emperors surrounded him, and so many ancient orthodoxies wanted to kill him, but he was still alive. How could he suddenly die? Everyone's first thought was disbelief. However, after many investigations, They finally confirmed that Chu Kuangren was sucked into the emperor-burying coffin and buried in the black soil. The emperor-burying coffin was an ancient ominous object. The black soil was the most treacherous place in the barren forbidden area. Under these two dangers, even an emperor would not be able to survive, let alone Chu Kuangren, who had yet to become an emperor. It was almost certain that Chu Kuangren was dead. All of a sudden, countless cultivators felt sorry for him. However, many ancient orthodoxies were overjoyed. The swordsman. Haha, Chu Kuangren, it's good that you're dead. The swordsman's clan leader laughed excitedly. This was the first time in countless years that he felt so happy. He was 10 times happier than when he first became the swordsman's clan leader. Pass down the order. There's a banquet today, and no one will leave until they're drunk. The swordsman's clan leader laughed. Yes. Besides the swordsman, the Wang family by family, Qin family, demonic tribe, and other ancient orthodoxies were also excited by the news of Chu Kuangren's death. The ancient orthodoxies celebrated like it was the new year. In other places, the emperor-burying coffin disaster had just passed, and many places were still immersed in sorrow. It was the complete opposite of the joy of the ancient orthodoxies. In a city, a sculptor took out a stone that he had treasured for a long time and carved a statue into it. He then placed it in the courtyard. "Daddy, who is he?" A little girl pointed at the stone statue and asked curiously. The sculptor did not answer. Instead, he pulled the little girl to kneel on the ground and kowtowed 3 times to the stone statue. "He's our great benefactor." When the coffin was dragged across the border, there was only death and no life. The various great ancient inheritances all withdrew like turtles, all of them cowering and afraid of death. Only he stepped forward bravely, fighting the demon coffin with all his might, ultimately returning peace to the world. The sculptor said. Countless commoners shared the same thoughts as the sculptor. To them, compared to the ancient orthodoxies who had abandoned the people of the world, Chu Kuangren was the savior of the world. Chu Kuangren, who had stepped forward bravely, was undoubtedly the savior of the world. Especially after the news of Chu Kuangren's death spread, the burying emperor's coffin no longer came out to do evil, which further confirmed the people's suspicions. Chu Kuangren had used his life to seal the emperor-burying coffin. This rumor spread like wildfire. Countless commoners began to erect a monument for him. Chu Kuangren's influence was greater than ever before. Chapter 637. Chu Kuangren is dead? Inside the 7 Emotions sect. The news of Chu Kuangren's death had reached here. Ying Huang, who had just received the news, could not help but feel shocked. In front of her, Lung Ningyu, who was just asking for her guidance, felt her heart throbbing as her face turned pale. "Ying Huang, what's going on?" Lung Ningyu asked in a panic. Ying Huang looked at the forbidden sky pride, who cultivated the path of forgetfulness in shock. However, she did not think too much about it and told Lung Ningyu everything about Chu Kuangren's death in the black soil. After listening, Lung Ningyu's eyes became a little dull. She staggered out of the hall. Her thin and frail body suddenly exuded a strong sense of despair. Cold Moon Deity and Red Moon walked over and saw Lung Ningyu's state. They could not help but feel their hearts clench. "Senior sister, what's wrong?" Red Moon walked up and asked. He's dead," Lung Ningyu murmured listlessly. Her eyes seemed to have lost focus as she walked forward. The warm sunlight shone on her body, but she could not feel the slightest bit of warmth. She felt that her body was cold. It was as if there was something stuck in her chest. Something in her eyes flowed out uncontrollably. Ah! Finally! Lung Ningyu let out a heart-wrenching cry as a strong sense of grief emanated from her body. Those who are unemotional are deeply in love. Cold Moon Deity, who was behind her, suddenly felt a little heartache when she saw that. Was her decision back then the right one? Things happened too quickly, and she was caught off guard. She did not expect Lung Ningyu to be so deeply in love. Moreover, she did not expect Chu Kuangren to fall so suddenly. How could the brightest and most dazzling prodigy disappear just like that? Senior sister, don't cry, don't cry." Red Moon walked up and hugged Lung Ningyu from behind to comfort her. However, as she spoke, she could not help but cry too. Cold Moon Deity walked up from the side with a complicated expression. Lung Ningyu looked at her tearful face and pointed at her chest. Honorable teacher, I've fallen in love with him, but it hurts here, it hurts so much. Child, the pain will be gone soon. Cold Moon Fairy hugged her and looked towards the depths of the 7 emotions sect. Ningyu, it's time for you to enter the Wangqing Heaven. Wangqing Heaven, a secret realm of the 7 emotions sect. Only those who cultivated the Supreme Wangqing Dao could enter, and it was only there that the Supreme Wangqing Dao could truly attain mastery. In the past, Cold Moon Fairy didn't let Lung Ningyu enter because she hadn't experienced love and hadn't truly cultivated the unmoved Dao. Without love, how could one forget? But now it was time for her to go. Under the black soil of the desolate forbidden land. Inside the coffin, Chu Kuangren was sucked into it and arrived in an extremely dark space. His surroundings were filled with an endless amount of chaotic qi. The chaotic qi was so dense that a single strand of it could crush an entire mountain range. However, there were more than 1,000 of them surrounding Chu Kuangren, and their terrifying pressure was crushing his body. However, Chu Kuangren looked calm and collected as he looked around curiously. He was not in a hurry to absorb the chaotic qi. I can't believe there's such a vast space hidden inside the coffin. Interesting. No one has entered the coffin's inner space for countless years. Am I the first to enter? Chu Kuangren chuckled. Chu Kuangren unleashed his spiritual thoughts to explore his surroundings. However, his spiritual thoughts could only extend for 10 kilometers. The rest was suppressed by the chaotic qi. Chu Kuangren was not in a hurry. He randomly picked a direction and walked forward. After an hour or so, he came before a wall that was crimson in color and was engraved with countless strange patterns. These patterns seemed to contain some kind of strange Taoist rhyme. These are not patterns, but Taoist patterns. Chu Kuangren's eyes lit up as he looked towards the front of the wall. Countless Taoist patterns intertwined to form a magnificent Taoist pattern wall. This is getting more and more interesting. Chu Kuangren continued to walk towards the end of the wall. Vaguely, he heard a series of strange whispers. The messy syllables were sometimes low and sometimes sharp. There was no order to it, and it was as if it wanted to pierce through his eardrums and into his brain. The syllables were too strange. It made Chu Kuangren feel like his head was about to explode. No, this sound has the effect of affecting one's mind. Chu Kuangren focused his gaze and activated his mind power. He had the telekinesis talent, which allowed him to block out most mental attacks. After casting a few layers of telekinesis barriers on himself, Chu Kuangren continued to walk forward. However, the inexplicable whispers were getting more and more frequent, and the effect was getting stronger. Even though Chu Kuangren's telekinesis barriers were effective, he could not hold on much longer. Not only that, but the further he went, the more the whispers affected his mind, and the deeper it affected his soul. Looks like I can't go any further for now. Chu Kuangren's soul was quite resilient. When he broke through to the Supreme Sage realm, he had absorbed an endless amount of purple qi into his body to reconstruct his soul. However, since this concerned his soul, he did not want to take the risk. After all, if he made the slightest mistake in such a strange place, who knew what would happen next? And what's that? Chu Kuangren suddenly noticed a faint golden light not far away. He walked closer and saw that it was a golden corpse. The corpse was wearing a golden red robe. Judging from the shape of the corpse, it was a human, or perhaps even a monk. Oh, looks like I'm not the first visitor. Chu Kuangren was a little surprised. He observed the corpse and found a line of words on the ground. The language of the underworld god soul-snatching. Before reaching the 10th level of the Bodhi Lotus scripture, one should not venture deeper. Looking at the small words, Chu Kuangren searched the corpse for a while, and found a yin and yang ring on the corpse's knuckles. He took off the ring and used his spiritual sense to find an ancient scripture inside. Countless mysterious characters were recorded in it. This is a Soul Dao technique. Chu Kuangren's eyes lit up. Techniques related to Soul Dao were too rare. Even Chu Kuangren did not have one on him. I didn't expect to find a soul Dao technique in this emperor burying coffin, and under such circumstances. Chu Kuangren could not help but sigh. The whispers that he heard must be the language of the underworld god that the corpse in front of him was talking about. Just when he was troubled about how to deal with the language of the underworld god, this soul Dao technique came knocking on his door. It really was like getting whatever he was missing. Chu Kuangren opened the technique and began to study it. It was an emperor scripture that recorded a technique called the Bodhi Lotus scripture. It was a soul Dao technique that leaned towards Buddhism. The scripture was divided into 12 levels. Judging from the warning that the corpse left behind, Chu Kuangren would need to cultivate to at least the 10th level before he could proceed further. Chu Kuangren's soul had been modified by the purple haze, and coupled with his meditational clarity attribute, his comprehension was almost unbelievably strong. Studying the emperor scripture was a piece of cake for him. Soon, he had thoroughly understood all 12 levels of the Bodhi Lotus scripture. All that was left was to cultivate. Chapter 638. Inside the burying emperor's coffin, Chu Kuangren had obtained the emperor's Bodhi Lotus scripture by chance. After thoroughly understanding it, he began to cultivate it. In the chaotic mist, Chu Kuangren sat with his legs crossed and channeled the spiritual power and emperor's qi within his body. The levels of the Bodhi Lotus scripture continued to rise. Inside his spiritual mound, a golden lotus throne suddenly appeared, and on it sat a tiny person. That tiny person was Chu Kuangren's soul. On the lotus throne, golden light flowed as 8 petals swayed with mysterious Taoist rhymes. The 8 petals signified that he had cultivated the Bodhi Lotus scripture to the 8th level, which was also the highest level he could reach at this stage. As for the 9th level, he needed to reach the Emperor's realm. The 9th level requires an Emperor's realm to reach, but to go deeper, I need to reach at least the 10th level. This is not an easy task. But how can I be an ordinary person? A glint flashed across Chu Kuangren's eyes. If it were any other place, he would have to stop here. However, he was inside the burying Emperor's coffin, and he was surrounded by endless chaotic qi. The chaotic qi could be converted into any elemental energy. At the same time, it could also be converted into soul energy. Since Chu Kuangren possessed the universal cauldron physique, he could absorb and refine the chaotic qi into soul energy to cultivate the Bodhi Lotus scripture. Time to refine it. Chu Kuangren activated the universal cauldron physique to its maximum capacity. In an instant, the surroundings trembled, and an endless amount of chaotic qi surged towards Chu Kuangren. Chaotic qi was a rare treasure in this world. Even one strand of it was enough to make countless emperors fight for it. However, the chaotic qi that surged towards Chu Kuangren was like rivers flowing into the sea. There were tens of thousands of them, and it was incredibly vast. Boom. The moment the chaotic qi came into contact with Chu Kuangren's physical body, his body trembled. The universal cauldron physique could indeed refine the chaotic qi quickly, but there was just too much of it. It was so much that Chu Kuangren's physical body could not withstand the terrifying pressure when the energy entered his body. If it were any other cultivator, they would have been instantly pulverized. Besides the universal cauldron physique, I also have the immortal body. The immortal body was activated. The 2 godly physiques activated at the same time, helping Chu Kuangren to quickly refine the chaotic qi and cultivate the Bodhi Lotus scripture. Very quickly, the golden lotus platform and soul in the spiritual ruin received a large amount of soul force converted from chaotic aura, and rapidly strengthened. On the golden lotus platform, the Taoist aura gradually condensed into a material form and transformed into profound Taoist patterns that emanated a mysterious fluctuation. The 9th petal was formed. He had successfully cultivated the 9th layer of the Bodhi Lotus Sutra. However, Chu Kuangren did not stop because of that. The chaotic qi around him continued to surge towards him as it continued to be refined. The chaotic qi in the burying emperor's coffin could be said to be endless. Since Chu Kuangren had the universal cauldron physique, he would not let go of this opportunity. The 10th petal, then the 11th petal. Time was unknown in the primal chaos. Chu Kuangren had no idea how much time had passed or how much chaotic qi he had refined as he continued to cultivate the Lotus Sutra. Until this day, Chu Kuangren abruptly opened his eyes. A golden light radiated from his body. As the golden light manifested, an illusory figure sitting on a 12th-stage golden lotus throne appeared. That illusory figure looked exactly like Chu Kuangren, but its expression was solemn like a bodhisattva that was impervious to all techniques. It was Chu Kuangren's 12th-stage Bodhi soul. The Bodhi spirit shone with a brilliant Buddhist light that illuminated the chaos. Countless chaotic qi retreated, and the strange murmurs of the Lord of the Underworld could no longer affect Chu Kuangren. In the depths of the burying emperor's coffin, a huge face suddenly opened its eyes and looked into the distance in shock. This aura. What's going on? What did that kid do? The 12th layer of the Bodhi Lotus Sutra. Even an emperor's soul is no match for mine now, Chu Kuangren murmured. The 9th layer of the Bodhi Lotus Sutra was already comparable to an emperor's soul. Yet Chu Kuangren had cultivated it all the way to the 12th layer. The highest level of the Bodhi Lotus Sutra. If it were not for the fact that the Lotus Sutra only had 12 layers, Chu Kuangren could even use the boundless chaotic qi to continue his cultivation. This trip has been worth it. Chu Kuangren kept the Bodhi spirit, and the Buddhist light that filled the sky disappeared. A satisfied smile appeared on his face. Just the 12th layer of the Bodhi Lotus Sutra alone was already a great opportunity for him. It was even greater than when he ascended the Emperor Mountain and became an emperor. After all, even an emperor did not have the soul energy that he did now. I wonder what other secrets are buried in the depths of this burying emperor's coffin. I'm getting more and more curious. Chu Kuangren kept the golden corpse in front of him. It was obvious that this corpse belonged to a powerful Buddha emperor when it was still alive. Chu Kuangren had also obtained the Bodhi Lotus scripture from that person, so he could not sit back and watch this corpse continue to be corroded by the chaotic qi. Chu Kuangren continued to walk deeper into the burying emperor's coffin. The murmurs of the Lord of the Underworld became more and more frequent, and its power grew stronger as well. Towards the end, even an emperor would not be able to withstand the impact of the murmurs of the Lord of the Underworld. However, Chu Kuangren was not affected at all. It was as if he was taking a stroll in the park. The 12th layer of the Bodhi spirit was too powerful. There were not many soul techniques in this world that could affect it. Gradually, Chu Kuangren saw a strange blood-colored light in the distance. When he got closer, he saw that the blood-colored light was formed by 4 blood-colored light pillars, and there was a person in the middle of these light pillars. It was a white-robed man. The man looked very handsome. His eyes were closed, and it looked like he was in a deep sleep. The 4 blood-colored light pillars pierced through the man's limbs, holding him firmly in midair. What surprised Chu Kuangren even more was that although the man looked like he was in a deep sleep, his body was emitting an extremely terrifying aura. That aura was stronger than anything Chu Kuangren had ever felt before. Not only that, but 1 or 2 bursts of gray mist would occasionally emerge from the man's body and merge into the boundless chaotic mist. This seemingly boundless chaotic energy was actually being emitted from this man's body. Just how terrifying was this man? Chu Kuangren was a little shocked. He activated his Eye of Revelation and quickly checked the mysterious man's information. Primal Chaos Taoist Master, Chaotic Physique, Taoist Cultivation Level. Currently sealed. His soul and consciousness are being corroded. It was not an easy task for Chu Kuangren to obtain information about the person in front of him. The other party's level was too much higher than his, but the information he obtained was enough to make him fall into deep thought. The Chaotic Physique is the #1 supreme Taoist physique among the 3,000 physiques. What realm is the Taoist Master Realm? Is it an immortal? Is it these 4 blood-colored light pillars that are corroding my soul? Chu Kuangren looked at the 4 blood-colored light pillars and carefully sensed them. He suddenly felt an unparalleled resentment from them. It was as if billions of living beings were roaring and wailing in front of him. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference. as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.